Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to the 7th Grand Prix of 2025 and the first European race of the season. And the European season is truly underway, thankfully. The European part of the season, for me, is the most entertaining part of a Formula One season. Of course, it does run for quite a while from now until the beginning of September, but we have got so many great racetracks coming your way in that time. And with how close things are in Formula One, we should have a very exciting next few months on our hands. But hope you guys are doing well. Of course, it's been a couple weeks since the last Grand Prix. My last live stream was the qualifying watch along for Miami. Didn't do a race watch along. Of course, I will be doing a race watch along tomorrow. But yeah, good to see you guys. Hope you've had a good couple weeks. I've had a decent couple weeks. The weather here in the UK is unbelievably good for this time of year. I know in some parts of the UK it's been literally, sunny for probably about 3 or 4 weeks straight. It has been absolutely incredible. In my part of the UK as well, it's basically been sunny and blisteringly hot every day. So yeah, I've had a good or decent couple weeks. Hope you guys have as well. And no matter what part of the world you're from, what time zone you're in, hope you're all having as best a time as possible as we come to the first European race of the season at Imola for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. A Grand Prix that has proven to be very competitive in these few years that we've returned here since 2020. We've had some good races, very close competition, and looking at practice so far, looks like that is going to keep up. Of course, we've got, as you can see, just under an hour and a half to go until qualifying gets underway at Imola. What we're going to do, as usual, in this qualifying build-up is go through the what's happened so far this weekend, the running of practice 2, and look at the data just to see what the pecking order is looking like so far this weekend. Obviously, I'll get into my predictions. We'll go through the teams one by one at some point, and I'll give my my view as to how all of them really should be doing and where they should be aiming for position-wise in qualifying. And obviously, I want to hear from you guys as well as to what you think is going to happen in this session. There is a poll running, of course, as usual, in the chat, where I've asked you who will take pole position for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. And your options are the two McLaren drivers, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, the world champion, Max Verstappen, who, of course, took pole here last year, and George Russell in the Mercedes, who, if he was to get pole, would be a bit of a surprise looking at the running so far. Mercedes are not a million miles away, but probably just a bit too far away. But in terms of who's the best, or the fourth best option for pole outside of Piastri, Norris and Verstappen, it probably would have to be Russell in the Mercedes, as I'll get onto in a moment by looking through the data. But yeah, hope you guys are all good. And I think we'll just get straight into the results of practice 2. And of course, practice 2 taking place yesterday in hotter conditions than it will be today. It was much sunnier yesterday in the area where Imola is. Today is a bit more cloudy, still hot, but not as hot again as it was yesterday. Yesterday probably will be the hottest day for the whole weekend. And if you're wondering in terms of weather, because I know we've had rain here in the past, if you're wondering in terms of weather, could we get some rain at some point? Looking at the weather, I think it will be probably a dry weekend. So don't think there'll be any concerns about rain or anything like that. But in the dry, quite clearly, and by no surprise, McLaren have the best car ahead of the rest of the field by a third of a second. And the next best car, Alpine, which is so random because at the last Grand Prix, Alpine were pretty slow. They were one of the slowest teams in the field in Miami. didn't really do anything. I know Gasly picked up, I think, a point in the sprint race, but that was only really because of the mental weather conditions and penalties for other drivers. That's really why that happened. If you look at the dry weather pace Alpine had in Miami, they were nowhere. But for some reason, they have now loads of pace here at Imola. Pierre Gasly, we do know, is very fast around this circuit. Remember, 5 years ago, he qualified 4th in an AlphaTauri. Was an incredible lap he did that day. And was a shame he actually retired early on in the race with a reliability issue because he was so quick that weekend. So Gasly, it's a favourite track of his, which is contributing definitely to the pace of the Alpine, but the Alpine genuinely looks good. So yeah, Alpine, I wouldn't say a contender for pole, definitely not, but in the midfield, absolutely, they are looking pretty strong. Mercedes and Red Bull looking from practice as though they're on a similar pace, but if you look at what just happened in practice 3, which finished about an hour ago, Max in the Red Bull looked quite a bit quicker than Mercedes did. So I think Red Bull will be ahead of Mercedes, not because Mercedes are necessarily slower, but because Max in that car is just a bit quicker than the Russell in his Mercedes car. So yeah, I think both Max and Russell will be closer to the McLarens, quite a bit closer to the McLarens in qualifying. We know Mercedes, Red Bull, and even Ferrari to an extent do get closer to McLaren as the weekend goes on in terms of from Friday practice to qualifying. They do get closer. So the gap won't be around half a second. It'll be a bit closer than that. And then, yeah, Leclerc 6th. Ferrari's 1-lap pace is not that bad, but it's not good. Leclerc really the only driver that Ferrari can really pin their hopes on, because Lewis Hamilton, as you can see, not in the top 10, and in practice 3, I think Hamilton was only barely in the top 10. So Lewis Hamilton is not to be relied upon and is still really struggling in his Ferrari. Of course, the car is not good enough, and that is contributing quite a bit to why Hamilton has not been good this season, but Lewis also clearly not anywhere near his best level. That is quite obvious to see. So, Leclerc is in the mix in terms of maybe a 4th or 5th place, I think, for qualifying, but I would be amazed if Ferrari ended up in the top 3 on the grid. That would be some effort from Leclerc, or even if Hamilton was to do that, it would be some effort, because that car is nowhere near as far as I'm concerned. And Ferrari, as you can see, in practice, only just ahead of Racing Bulls. Isaac Hadjar has been incredibly quick all weekend. Hadjar continuing his really been, I think, surprisingly good debut season in Formula One. The Racing Bulls car, of course, is continuing its good pace also. But yeah, Hadjar is someone you've got to look out for in qualifying today, because he could cause a surprise, especially if Ferrari are not quite delivering in qualifying. He could maybe even out-qualify both Ferrari cars. It's not impossible today. Yuki Tsunoda in 8th. Only, actually less than a 10th slower than Max in practice 2. But then in practice 3, Tsunoda on, I think, was it the same tyres as Max? Was like a second slower. So not quite sure what Tsunoda's actual, true, consistent performance is like this weekend. I think Tsunoda really is going to be battling to get inside the top 10. I think that's what his battle is going to be. But if he can get that close to Verstappen, less than a 10th away, then really Tsunoda should be aiming for a top 5 finish in qualifying today. Then you got the two Williamses, 9th and 10th. Now, if Williams were to get both cars in the top 10 in qualifying later, that would be an incredible effort because of how competitive it is in the midfield with, them, Alpine, Racing Bulls, all looking very quick. So I think there's quite a decent chance, I would say, that Williams will get a car into Q3, but both cars into Q3, again, it's going to be, I think, something, I won't say special to do that, but it would be a really top effort, I think, from Williams to get both their cars through, because it is so incredibly close in the midfield. And obviously in Miami, we saw that Williams did have the fastest midfield car, to the point where they were actually faster than Ferrari genuinely over the race weekend. But here, I'd say Alpine and probably, well, arguably, Racing Bulls are quicker than them as well. It's very, very close between Racing Bulls and Williams. But I think Alpine, you would have to say, probably quicker. So yeah, it's going to be tough for Williams, but they've definitely still got a very competitive car. And then just outside of the top 10, Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton's never really been that great at this Imola circuit, so maybe you could, factor that in as to why Hamilton has not really been, super quick this weekend. I mean, a couple tenths slower than Leclerc in practice doesn't sound that bad, but when you remember that this is the Imola circuit, which is, one of the shorter laps of the year, to be a couple tenths of a second off the pace of your teammate is actually quite a lot because of how short the lap is. And really, for Hamilton, he should be no more than a tenth of a second off the pace of his teammate, again, given the shortness of the lap. So, yeah, Hamilton, once again, just nowhere near good enough. Yes, the car is not good, I know that, but he is not delivering his maximum performance. That is clear to see. And he will do well to make it into Q3, because it is, again, that fight to get into Q3 is very competitive with not just him, but, Alpine, Racing Bulls, Williams, maybe even Haas. You can see Oliver Behrman just behind him, maybe able to spring a surprise and get himself in the top 10. So, yeah, it's going to be very close. And I think there is a pretty decent chance that Lewis Hamilton misses out on Q3, just given how he has performed here in the past and how he's performing in general at the minute in 2025. So, yeah, my hopes not high really at all for Hamilton. For Oliver Behrman just behind him, yeah, Behrman has definitely a chance at making the top 10. I don't think the car ultimately is quick enough, though, to be in the top 10, but if one of the Williamses or let's say Hadjar doesn't quite hook up the best lap in Q2, if Behrman can, then there is definitely a chance he could sneak in. So watch out for Oliver Behrman. Watch out for Franco Colapinto as well. And really, if Gasly is going to be super quick in this session and make Q3 comfortably, then really Colapinto should be making Q3 as well. I know it's his first weekend in the car, obviously replacing Jack Doohan, but that car clearly has quite a bit of pace. So, yeah, Colapinto has got to make him, he's got to put himself in a competitive position for tomorrow's race. Even if he ends up in P11, that's not the end of the world. But, he's got to put himself in a decent position for the race, no doubt, because the car is, without doubt, quick. And then you got Alonso 14th, Aston Martin are absolutely terrible, no surprise. Liam Lawson 15th, nowhere near good enough from Lawson. And then you got Bortoletto in 16th, and then Stroll, Antonelli, Hulkenberg, and Ocon. I'm not quite sure who has the slowest car. Probably, honestly, I would probably say Aston Martin have the slowest car. And the reason I would say that is because I think Alonso is making still that Aston Martin look a lot better than it actually is. So yeah, Sauber and Aston Martin definitely the two slowest teams here at Imola. But let's just go through the sector time data just to understand why the teams, or why certain teams are as quick or as slow as they are at the moment around this Imola circuit. And in the first sector, which is really about your downforces, you've got quite a few high-speed corners. McLaren, no surprise, not just quickest, but by far the quickest team. Nearly 0.2 of a second quicker than the next best car, being Tsunoda in the Red Bull. And then you just behind, you got Hadjar on the Racing Bulls. Not really a surprise that Racing Bulls are so quick in this part of the lap. In high-speed corners, that car is very good. The Alpine then very close behind, and then you've got Ferrari and Williams on pretty much the same pace. Ferrari definitely should be closer in the first sector by at least, I'd say, 1/10 of a second. So yeah, not good enough from Ferrari here. Sauber, slightly slower. And then Mercedes, 8th best only in the first sector. Now, they will definitely improve on that. They will be, I think, at least 1/10.5 quicker in the first sector in qualifying. So there's definitely more pace to come from Mercedes in this part of the lap. And then Aston Martin, you've got in 9th, and Haas, surprisingly for me, the slowest in the first sector. Now, that might be still because of their top speed disadvantage they have, where they've regularly been at the bottom of the speed traps. Because of course, in the first sector, you have the majority of the pit straight, which is quite long, so that might be contributing to it. Yeah, we'll have to see, but yeah, that is a possible reason why they are surprisingly the slowest in this part of the lap. And then you've got the middle sector, which is a combination, I would say, of medium to high speed to even slow speed corners. You've got all types, really, of corners in this part of the lap. McLaren, again, no surprise, the quickest team. And again, nearly 0.2 of a second quicker than the next best team. This time being Alpine. Very quick in the middle sector. Good to see, because it shows that Alpine is good through any type of corner if you're good through the middle sector. Then you've got Red Bull, a couple tenths of a second behind, which is, I mean, for practice, it's not too bad. I would expect maybe them to be slightly closer than that, though. Racing Bull still good. Mercedes quite a bit better than they were in the first sector. Ferrari, I think, again, should be quicker in the middle sector, but it probably only by 1/10. I don't think they really should be massively quicker. But yeah, Ferrari still lacking pace in this part of the lap. Williams, not great, but nothing terrible. Haas a bit better, and then Aston Martin and Sauber, the two slowest teams. Sauber, for some reason, incredibly slow in the middle sector. Don't quite know why. They're even 1/4 of a second off the pace of Aston Martin in the middle sector. So yeah, if they can improve on that middle sector, which is an outlier by the looks of it for Sauber, then they definitely should be quicker than Aston Martin. And then the final sector, which is all about really those final two corners, which are, again, crucial to your lap. And I think what I love about this Imola circuit in qualifying is that, a lot of other tracks, you'll have one sector that is the most important above all. At this track, I don't think there is any sector in particular that is more important. I think they're all equally as important as each other. If you mess up any of the sectors, you mess up your qualifying. You can't, be good in the, say, you can't be, let's say you're really good in the most important sector at another track, let's say Suzuka, the first sector there. If you're really good in the first sector at Suzuka and then not that great in the rest of the lap, you can still kind of get away with it. But here at Imola, again, that's why I love this circuit, you can't. You have to be consistently on it every corner throughout the entire lap. And that's what really showcases the best from the not so good here in Formula 1. But McLaren, again, not surprised. The quickest team, nearly 2/10 quicker than Mercedes and Ferrari. I don't really think Mercedes and Ferrari could be any quicker through this part of the lap, to be honest. Williams, a lot better. Alpine, still good. Red Bull, not great, which is not a surprise. The front end of that Red Bull, I still don't think is necessarily that great. So they're not going to be that amazing, really, through the final part of the lap. But I think they will be quite a bit closer in the final sector in qualifying. Because as you can see, Red Bull doing the same pace as Haas in the final sector. Racing Bulls then in 8th, not a great end to the lap. So if they can improve on that by, say, 1/10 of a second, then maybe that could allow an Isaac Hadjar to get a really good qualifying result. And then Sauber, quicker than Aston Martin in the final sector. So yeah, for Sauber, as long as they are on the pace of Aston Martin in the middle sector, and keep up their pace in the first and third sector, definitely should be quicker than Aston Martin, and maybe getting one of their cars into Q2, maybe? We'll have to see. And also, with Haas, if they can improve by maybe 1/10, maybe even 2/10 of a second in that first sector, they really could be contenders to maybe get a car into Q3. Especially with Oliver Behrman, who appears to be the quicker of the two Haas drivers this weekend. But if I just come back to these practice 2 results, the pecking order is not that easy to predict, I think. McLaren, I do think, have the best car, but I don't think that necessarily means they'll get pole position. Because, as we know, Max Verstappen will be closer in qualifying compared to how he was in practice 2. But also, Max is quite a bit quicker when he's at his best compared to Piastri and Norris. That is just a fact. Verstappen is clearly the best driver in Formula 1. I don't think there's any debate as to that right now. So McLaren have definitely got the best car. Again, though, like we saw in Miami, in Saudi Arabia, even Suzuka, does not mean they'll get pole position. Second quickest, I would probably say Red Bull and Mercedes pretty much on the same pace. So let's say Red Bull second, Mercedes third. Ferrari, I would say 4th. Not by much, but I would say 4th quickest. And then 5th, I would go Alpine, 5th quickest, and then Racing Bulls 6th. 7th, I would go... Actually, no. 6th, I would go Williams. 7th, I would go Racing Bulls. And then Haas 8th, Sauber 9th, and Aston Martin 10th. That's my pecking order. Might be a bit different in reality once we get to qualifying, but that's what I think it will be when we get into qualifying. But given that's what I think the pecking order is, let me get into my prediction for qualifying, which may be a bit surprising to some of you. Even though McLaren have got the best car, again, because Max Verstappen is Max Verstappen, and he is close enough at what is a real driver's circuit to make the difference, Max Verstappen, in my view, just about will take pole position in a very similar qualifying session to what we had last year, when Max pulled out 2 absolutely brilliant laps in Q3 to make sure he just about got pole position, and that's what I think will happen today. Second, I think will be Oscar Piastri, only half a 10th behind. Lando Norris then, I think, will be in 3rd, and yeah, a 10th I think will cover the top 3. 4th, I'm going George Russell, which is not bad for Mercedes if they end up there and only, say, a couple tenths off pole. That's not bad whatsoever. Leclerc 5th, Antonelli 6th, and then I'm going Gasly 7th, Hadjar 8th, Hamilton 9th, and Carlos Sainz in P10. So that's my top 10 qualifying prediction. Let me know, guys, in the live chat. Who do you think takes pole? Let me know in the poll as well, running in the chat. Who do you think takes pole position, and why do you think your driver that you predicted will take pole position. Let me know in the chat in the next hour or so. And make sure as well to smash the like button on this stream. Of course, does help the channel grow, helps, in the algorithm, but also helps show me that you guys enjoy the content. So make sure to smash the like button. But let me just quickly get the timer back on screen because we've got about an hour to go. There you go. An hour to go, pretty much, until qualifying begins at Imola. I just want to say thank you to the support on the Oscar Piastri video that I did in... when did it come out? I think it was Tuesday, wasn't it, that it came out? So would have been like, what, 4 or 5 days ago. Yeah, thank you for the support on that video. It's done a lot better than I expected. So, yeah, thank you for that. And if you haven't seen it, there is a link below in the description to why McLaren's best bet for the championship is Oscar Piastri. Make sure to go check that out. But, yeah, cheers for the support on that video. And that will be, unfortunately, the last recorded video on the channel, because we're now entering a triple header. That'll be the last recorded video on the channel, probably until the second week of June, something like that. We'll see when exactly I'll produce my next recorded video. But what we're focusing on now is this triple header until we publish any more, in-season videos or anything like that. But let me just quickly, before I read any comments, clear my throat, have a drink, and then I'll come back to you guys in a moment. Right, so let's see what you guys are having to say. By the way, thank you to A then, I think it is, who for £10 has super chatted. So yeah, thank you very much for that. And says here's thanks for your watch along. No problem, and thank you for the donation. But let's get reading some of your comments. Good afternoon to Herman. Space Law says hello, listening, but mostly away from the keyboard. No problem. Of course, preferably if you can watch the session along with me, that'd be great. But if you just want to listen along to keep up to date with what's going on, then that is absolutely fine, because I will, of course, keep you absolutely bang up to date with what goes on at the track. Hello to Brabham as well. Good to see you. Thanks to Sarah Garris. Congratulations to Kelsey for yesterday. Yeah, that was way tougher than it needed to be. We really should have comfortably beat them. They are an absolutely rubbish team, are United. But all we needed was to win, and we got it. And all we got to do now is win our final 2 games of the season. When I say 2 games, I mean obviously the final league game away to Nottingham Forest, and then obviously the Conference League final. We win those 2 games, then it's been a successful season, no doubt, because we'll end up finishing obviously in the Champions League places, probably in the top 4, hopefully, and then winning a European trophy, something that not all London clubs can claim to have won. And I know it's the Conference League, but a trophy is a trophy. I mean, there's clubs out there that still celebrate winning Cup Winners' Cup trophies. So, a trophy's a trophy. But yeah, cheers for that. Brabham says, I can't see Lewis coming back next year if he keeps this up all season. Yeah, if this continues the whole season, and there is basically no let up from how consistently poor his performance is, then Possibly, yeah. I think what might change that, though, is if you remember last year. Sorry, let me say that again. If you remember last year, in the final, I think 3 races before the summer break, Hamilton suddenly picked up form. He won at Silverstone, then he had a podium in Hungary, and then he won at Spa. If that, and obviously Ferrari would need to improve for that to happen. If that started to happen, then I think Hamilton, based on that, would continue. But if he consistently keeps up this level of performance for basically the entire season, then maybe in his head he'll think, there's no point continuing because I'm just not at the level that I was. Hello to Astro. Good to see you. Of course, watching from Australia. And I know it's late night, very late night over there. And just to announce as well, of course, I am doing a race watch along tomorrow, and I will be joined by my co-commentator Niblo for the race watch along. And hopefully it'll be a proper good race. Also, another thing I want to quickly just say or announce is what my content plan is for this triple header. So obviously this weekend I'm doing a quali and race watch along, and then the podcast will come out, day after the Grand Prix. I will not be doing, though, unless it rains for these 2 particular race days, I will not be doing a race watch along for Monaco or the Spanish Grand Prix. I will only be doing qualifying watch alongs for those 2 Grand Prix. But again, if there is rain forecast for the Monaco Grand Prix or the Spanish Grand Prix, then I will change my mind. But if it's going to be dry, then I will only do a qualifying stream. But don't worry, the races where I do both qualifying and race watch-alongs will be consistently coming back once we get to the Canadian Grand Prix, because the reason I'm only going to be doing a quali watch-along for Monaco and Spain is because I'm entering now my final 3, or not really 3, I'd say 2.5 weeks now of uni. And my final project, which I've been working on for months, it's done, but I just need to exhibit it in a public way, in a public display, and I just got to sort that out and get that done, and also get some other work done and handed in as well. So yeah, I really need to focus hard on these final 2.5 weeks. But once I'm done with uni, which is, I think my final day is the 5th of June, then for the races after that, Canada, Austria, Silverstone, I'll be able to do quali and race watch-alongs for all those races. And then probably for the couple races at Spa and Hungary before the summer break as well. So yeah, it'll be a lot more consistent, my streams, after I finish uni in 2.5 weeks. So yeah. So again, quali and race watch along this weekend, and then just a quali watch along next weekend, and then just a qualifying watch along for Spain. And then from Canada on, it will be qualifying and race watch alongs consistently for a few races. But yeah, let me read some comments, and I will do a roundup of the teams and go through just what the teams need to be aiming for in this session, but not quite yet. We'll be going through your comments probably for the next half an hour or so. As Rook says, hi Chaz and all, welcome to the catchily named Formula 1 AWS Gran Premio del Made in Italy del Emilia Romagna 2025. Yeah. Or as we say, Imola. Yeah. Just ridiculous name for a Grand Prix. Astro was given his prediction. Piastri on pole, Russell second, Antonelli third, and then Leclerc, Norris, and Max. Got good feeling about Ferrari and Mercedes, but no real basis for it. Yeah, I think Mercedes there's a basis for it, but I don't think there is for Ferrari. Ferrari, they have got a big upgrade coming. Is it for the Spanish Grand Prix? And then they've got a big suspension upgrade coming at the British Grand Prix. Obviously, the championship is over for them, so it's irrelevant as to whether it's going to, give them the pace to start winning races. Because even if they do, again, the championship is over. But, yeah, if you're a Ferrari fan, you might have to wait a bit longer for an improvement. I will say, though, I'm not sure at the minute, given that some teams, brought upgrades here, I'm not sure at the minute you could necessarily say 100%, what teams have improved. I mean, yeah, you could say Alpine, but Alpine was super quick in Bahrain, and then a couple races later in Miami were nowhere. So maybe the Alpine car's just inconsistent. So yeah, in terms of upgrades, there's nothing clear, um, you know, to say in terms of who has improved. So yeah, let's wait and see with this session. Mr. President, which Premier League team do you support? Chelsea. Astro saying, yeah, 10:30 p.m. now, which ain't too bad. Adelaide Hills, yeah, not too bad. I know the European races are just about okay for you guys in Australia because it's just about late at night rather than middle of the night, which is why Nib is able to join me for European races because it's just about okay. But obviously the American races are just absolutely awful for you guys. Fury says Lewis will pole this time. Be amazed if he does that. Astro says gutted for Jack Doohan, hoping he does return after 5 races off. Guess you heard he was threatened by Colapinto fans, had to have private security hired at Miami because of that. Yeah, I did hear of that, and it's actually something I do want to talk about in this build up to qualifying because, of course, we haven't discussed the Doohan news in terms of him being replaced. The last time I talked about Jack Doohan was my podcast the day after the Miami Grand Prix, but it had not been announced at that point that he was out of the car. And yeah, Colapinto is now in the car for 5 races, and we'll see how he performs. Obviously, it's wrong. Doohan being threatened by Colapinto fans. Those fans are absolutely fucking insane. And, I mean, Franco himself does not obviously condone that, and those fans are just absolutely mental. And you've got to say, no disrespect, but South American fans, when it comes to sport, just take things way too seriously. Um, with basically everything. So yeah, it was sad to see that. In terms of Jack Doohan's performance, it just wasn't good enough. There were a couple shades of maybe he could have done something. I remember in Bahrain, he was running in the points for a few laps, but just not good enough, I'm afraid. And if Colapinto can come in and be consistently a lot closer to Gasly, then Colapinto should stay in the car. Colapinto, for me, needs to be anywhere between a tenth and 2/10 of a second at worst, consistently off the pace of Gasly. If he remains about that far off Gasly, then I think that's enough for Colapinto to be in the car. When Doohan was quite a bit further off the pace of Pierre, um, you know, in uh, in in the qualifying sessions that we saw this season. So I think Doohan deserved to be replaced. I don't think Doohan was magically just going to start getting better. If you start off consistently that far off your teammate, especially a teammate like Pierre Gasly, who I like Gasly a lot, but Pierre Gasly is not an elite Formula One driver. He's he's a very good midfield level driver, but he's not elite. If you're going to be that far off Gasly, then you're not gonna be successful in Formula One, I'm afraid. And yeah, I think it was the right decision, a decision that was inevitable for quite a while. And we'll see how Colapinto does. Like I said, if Colapinto can be, say, on average, a tenth and a half a lap slower than Gasly, that would be, I think, good enough. Because Doohan was quite a bit further behind on average compared to Pierre, I believe. So, yeah, I think the right decision has been made, and we'll see what Colapinto can do. At least with Colapinto, he did show us in his time at Williams, even though, yeah, he did have a couple crashes towards the end of his Williams career. He showed us enough signs that he could be a success in the midfield pack. He could be a success in Formula One. When Doohan never once showed that he could be a success in Formula One. He never had that race weekend that you could point to and say, he could do something in Formula One. It never happened for him. And also the incident at Suzuka, going through turn one of the DRS Open, I think absolutely hurt his case to be in that car for any longer than the Miami Grand Prix. And what he did was quite stupid. I know he had done it in the simulator and it maybe had worked, but the simulator is the simulator. And real life is always going to be different and tougher than the simulator. So, yeah. I think correct decision, but just a shame that, the threats that he received and, having to hire security and all of that. It really is a real shame that that had to happen. But yeah, Colapinto is in the car, and we'll see what he can do. By the way, if you hear me not speaking for a few seconds, I'm just having to clear my throat. My throat quite dry. Not because I'm not drinking water or anything. It's just very muggy and hot outside, and I've got my window closed, obviously. So yeah, the air is quite dry, so not exactly helping. But yeah, we'll see how Colapinto does. I hope he can be a lot better than Gasly, or sorry, than Doohan. But yeah, we'll see. See what happens. Astra says, I know he made mistakes and results weren't great, but he was a rookie and showed real glimpses of potential and out-qualified Gasly by 4 places last race. I don't think I would agree he showed real glimpses of potential. I mean, yeah, he did out-qualify Gasly by 4 places at the last Grand Prix. But then, and I don't think it was his fault, but I don't think it was clearly the other guy's fault either. He immediately ruined, you could say, that advantage at turn 1 of the Grand Prix by having an accident with Liam Lawson. Now, again, I don't think it was his fault. I think it was just a racing incident, but he definitely could have been a bit more careful at the first corner. But what the teams are looking for is I mean, one, if you have a race weekend, a really good race weekend, where you get pretty much the maximum out of the car in qualifying and pretty much the race as well, then at least the team have got, something to build on. And with Doohan, that never, there was never that weekend that they could build on with him. But also, if you're really going to make it as a midfield driver in Formula One, you have to be somewhat consistent, and he was consistently not good. So, yeah. He's not obviously a bad racing driver. He's good. I'm sure he'll have a good racing career somewhere else. I mean, WEC is definitely an option, given if you look at some of the drivers in that series. I think definitely he would be good enough to race for one of the teams in that series. But Formula One, I just don't think is quite his level. I'm afraid. Maybe IndyCar, we'll see. But yeah, I just don't think Formula One is quite his level, unfortunately. I think, I stand by what I said before he made his debut in Abu Dhabi at the end of last year. I think he he deserved an opportunity because of how good he was in Formula 2. But he was given a few races and he didn't really show any real reason to why he should be still on the grid. Um, Doohan only had 6 races, hard to be consistent in that short spell. That is true, but he didn't show again any big, glimpses of potential in my view. When if you look at Colapinto in his shortish spell at Williams, he did. Obviously the first Grand Prix weekend at Monza where he was very close, I think, to points. Then in Baku, finished in I think was it 7th or 8th place. He showed us something when I personally I don't think Doohan showed us really anything that you would be like, right, we've got to keep this guy on the grid. But like I said, I don't think Formula One, from what I saw of him, I don't think Formula One is quite his level. But I think he could still have easily a successful enough career in WEC or GT racing or maybe even IndyCar if if he got set up with the right team. I mean, who knows how he would get on with those cars? But yeah, we would have to say. But yeah, we'll see how Colapinto gets on. But the thing is, if Colapinto comes in and doesn't do that much better than Doohan, then are they really going to go back to Jack Doohan? Because I don't see, the whole point of replacing a driver is the replacement almost every time is supposed to be better than the person being replaced. So, will Alpine just keep hiring new drivers until they find someone who can consistently or semi-consistently do a job for them? I don't know. We'll have to see. Doing beating Gasly in quality at Miami Chazza. Yeah, he beat Gasly, but that's not enough. If he had beat Gasly and ended up qualifying in the top 10, great. But he qualified, what was it, like 14th or something? I know the car wasn't good, but um, that's still not anything to shout about. Let me look. Yeah, Doohan was 14th and Gasly was 18th. Yeah, he did. I would say he did the best he could in terms of he outqualified his teammate, but he was still 14th on the grid. So the team are not really going to look at that and take anything from that. Um, and then retired almost instantly after the collision with Liam Lawson, I think it was, at turn 1. But yeah. Anyway, we'll see how Colapinto does. Not sure who else Alpine have got, in their system who could maybe come in and do a few races. Maybe they will just rotate it between Colapinto and Doohan, even though if they're both going to be as bad as each other, I don't really see what the point of that is. You may as well just keep one driver over the other in the car consistently if they're both going to be about as bad as each other. And yeah, we'll see. So yeah. Right, let me just have a look on X to see if there is any news I can bring you guys. And no, I don't think there's any new news, I'm afraid, on social media. And no. So say regardless, says, wouldn't you guys have gotten Colapinto to Alpine anyway? Because I would have. Not saying Doohan deserved that treatment or anything. I mean, yeah, maybe they should have started with Colapinto instead of Doohan. I think we need to see what happens in these upcoming races to see whether maybe they should have done that instead. But again, if Colapinto is just as bad as Doohan, then doesn't really make a difference at the end of the day. But I can see Sky F1 are just doing a piece on the Colapinto and Doohan switch. And I hope for Alpine's sake that Colapinto does work out, because obviously they did for years have a very consistent, good midfield driver in Esteban Ocon in that car, who was then joined by Pierre Gasly after Fernando Alonso left the team. But it's appearing to be quite a struggle to replace Ocon, who I know things ended badly with Ocon and Alpine, but I do think Alpine need to give Ocon a bit more credit for the job he did at Alpine. Ocon, he did well for Alpine. Esteban is not an elite level driver. He's not one of the, he's not on the level of, obviously not of Verstappen. He's not even on the level, I would say, of Leclerc, Norris, Piastri, Russell, Hamilton. He's not on that level either. But for years, he was, he was, a lot of the time, he was the best driver at Alpine in terms of, the championship. Regularly picked up, strong points for the team. Obviously won a race for the team. I think the only race Alpine won. And, even though the relationship did not end well, I do think more credit needs to be given to Esteban for the job he did. And remember, of course, I know Gasly was on the podium as well with him, but remember Brazil last year, where Ocon finished in second and was actually leading the race for a few laps. So, was he leading the race for a few laps? No, he was leading under the red flag. I don't think he was leading for a few laps, though. I think Max instantly got past him at the restart of the race. But, they really should be giving Ocon a lot more credit for the job he did, because he did very well for a few years for that team. But that relationship's over. Ocon is at Haas. Alpine are now searching for his replacement. I will say, though, long term, because obviously Alpine next year will be powered by Mercedes, which might be a really big boost for Alpine, because the rumors still are that Mercedes are going to have very strong engines next year. Of course, Renault, this is their final year this year for in Formula One. They're not going to be part of the new era that's coming up next year. I think long term there are some options out there that they could go with that could be beneficial. Yuki Tsunoda, I think, is an option, because I don't think Tsunoda's place at Red Bull is necessarily secure, especially if Red Bull, lose Max Verstappen. So, Tsunoda is an option. You've got Isaac Hadjar, who, of course, a big plus is that he is French, and Hadjar is performing so far, I think, pretty well. So I think Hadjar's an option they could go with. And then obviously you've got drivers in Formula 2. Victor Martins is someone they've had in their system for a while. He won the Formula 3 championship, I think, 3 years ago. So, long term, there are some options out there that Alpine maybe could go with. But, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, let me just clear my throat again, guys, and then I'll come back to some more comments. And in a moment as well, I will post a link of the stream out one final time, as I usually do. Brevum says Alpine, if they played their cards right, could have had a Piastri and Alonso lineup. Possibly. I think definitely with Oscar Piastri, they messed that up big time. Did Alpine. I think Alonso, I think he was always looking to leave the Alpine team. I know there was a period of negotiation where Alonso was looking possibly to stay with the team, and Alpine were not really keen to negotiate because they thought Alonso was too old and they wanted to go with a younger lineup. But I think, given the offer and the higher potential that Aston Martin have got, I think Alonso probably would have gone to Aston Martin anyway. I mean, yeah, Alpine, if they had really negotiated hard earlier on with Alonso, maybe they could have got him signed, but I don't think it was a guarantee necessarily. With Piastri, though, if they had, say, early in the 2022 season, had signed Oscar up to a race contract for 2023, I think Piastri would have raced for Alpine in 2023. I don't think there would have been a possibility of McLaren, coming in and taking Oscar at that point. The reason Oscar went to McLaren was because McLaren, or what was it? Mark Webber, of course, his manager, was trying to get Oscar onto the grid, and Alpine was still messing around with him and messing around with what their lineup was going to be. And of course, they wanted certainty that Oscar was going to be on the grid. Because remember, 2021, Oscar won the championship in F2, and then he wasn't on the grid in 2022, when really he probably should have been in some team. So they wanted a guarantee that they'd be on the grid for 2023, and that's why they negotiated with McLaren and got that sorted. And then we had that whole debacle where Alpine announced Piastri in their car, and then Piastri said, they made that famous tweet. Yeah, they really did drop the ball on Oscar Piastri, no doubt. I mean, right now, I think it'd be more likely they'd have a lineup of Piastri and Gasly in that team, which would be, in the midfield, probably the best lineup they could probably have. But yeah, they absolutely fumbled it. As well, Brabham's got another good question there, which I will read out in just a moment. I just want to post the stream link out one final time before we go any further. So let me just quickly do this. Come join us here to Watchalong qualifying at Imola. And we'll see if we get some more people hopping on in a moment. Yeah, Brabham asks, question Chaz, if Lewis leaves, who gets his seat? That is an interesting one, because again, Lewis, he is contracted until the end of 2026. He does have an option for 2027, but personally, I don't think he'll be in Formula One for that long. If Lewis was to leave at the end of this season, then I would go with yeah, I think I'd have to go with Oliver Behrman. I don't see really what other options they would have. I was thinking Alex Albon, but I think Albon is pretty secure with the contract he's got at Williams. And also, I think he's also pretty keen, Albon, to stay with Williams, because Williams will have Mercedes power next year. And Williams could be actually one of the most competitive teams on the grid. And yeah, Albon signed a multi-year extension this time last year. And he will be at Williams until at least the end of 2026. So yeah, I'd say Albon. I don't think so, but yeah, I think Oliver Behrman it would be. I think he would have to be the replacement. But, would Behrman in the long term be in that seat? It depends purely on his performance, I think, at the end of the day. I think Behrman has been... How's the best way to describe Behrman's 2025? He's been, I think, decent is what I would call it. And the reason I would say decent instead of good is because Ocon has outscored him in the championship, and in the races, I think Ocon has been superior. If Behrman wants to be at that elite level, then no disrespect to Esteban Ocon, you've got to be ahead of Ocon on a consistent basis. There are times where Behrman is ahead of Ocon, but not all the time. What do you call it? So yeah, that's what Behrman, if he wants to really make his case for a top seat, like the Ferrari seat in the future, then yeah, that's what he needs to. That's what he needs to do, is just consistently beat Ocon. If he does that, because of Ocon's reputation of being a very good midfield performer, I think that would give Ferrari enough confidence to hire him as the what would be the second driver, because no doubt Charles Leclerc is the number one driver at Ferrari, and Leclerc has a contract at Ferrari until let me just have a look. Yeah, looks like Leclerc has a contract, multi-year deal, possibly until 2029, and the rumor is that it may include a break clause. So, yeah, but let's say in this new era coming up next year, let's say Ferrari do produce a championship winning car. then Leclerc will probably be with Ferrari until the end of the decade. So he will need a consistent, reliable number 2 driver, really, alongside him to also get some podiums, maybe the odd win. And maybe Oliver Behrman will be that option. Rook's asking, who are the race stewards this weekend? I was wondering if we should keep track of them, given that some races have been lenient and some harsh penalty-wise. I have no idea, and I don't even know how to find that out, to be honest. But it should be, honestly, the stewards should be consistent. There's no real reason to have constant rotation in my view. Astra says Verstappen to Ferrari to try and do what Seb and Lewis couldn't do and win a title with them. It's an option. It's it would be a challenge that would maybe be enticing to him, but is Max willing to put up with Ferrari being Ferrari for that amount of time? We'll have to see. But I think if Max was to join Ferrari and Leclerc was there, then I don't think it would quite work out like Max would want to. I think the only way Max joins Ferrari is if Leclerc leaves. I don't think Max would go there if Leclerc was there, because the team pretty much is built around Leclerc. I think people forget how long Leclerc has been at Ferrari. This is his, 7th season, I think, with Ferrari. It's his team. And it's been his team pretty much since, midway through 2019. So, I don't think Max would go there with Leclerc still there. Max's options, I think, are either stay with Red Bull or go to Aston Martin. I think those are the two clear options. I don't think he's going to go to Mercedes. I think Mercedes are happy with what they've got. And if they do produce, say, the best car next year, what they've got in their driver lineup is enough to win championships. Absolutely. So, yeah, I think the only options for Max right now is either stay at Red Bull or go to Aston Martin. Remember, Max's contract is up at the end of 2028 at Red Bull. So if he decides to stay until his contract ends, then yeah. Then, this year, if he does win the championship somehow, could be his last championship for a few years if Red Bull are nowhere to be seen from next year on. Taro Power says, what about Zhou? Absolutely no chance. Zhou is a terrible driver. Hulk for a year, says Brabham. I don't think Ferrari would want to only hire a driver for a year like that. Yeah, I don't think Ferrari would want to would want to do that. I think Ferrari, if you look at a lot of their hires, they've all, if you look at their driver hires, let's say, ever since they replaced Raikkonen with Leclerc, it's always been in view to the long term. I know they've got Lewis Hamilton in the car, but I mean, if you look at the contract they gave Hamilton, it's not a short-term contract. It's a 2+1 deal. 2 years plus an option for a third year. That's not a short-term deal. So Ferrari, they've always been keen on long-term options. When if you look at Red Bull, obviously they've got Max there. In terms of who Max's teammate is, it's always a short-term option. Just anyone they can find who can do a good enough job. But yeah, Ferrari, they go for the long-term option. So I think, again, if Hamilton was to leave at the end of the season, I think Behrman would probably be the choice they would go with. Unless Behrman was being, consistently beaten by Ocon, then maybe Maybe they go for somebody else. I'm not sure who they would go for though. Maybe a surprise. Maybe they would go for a Sonoda or even an Isaac Hadjar. Who knows? But yeah. Astra says, yeah, of course, Max hates the idea of having a competitive teammate and equal machines getting equal focus from the team. I don't think he hates the idea. He just would rather not. And I think with the position he's in, he doesn't need to go join a team and race with an equal teammate. I think, Max knows he would beat, a George Russell in the same car, but he doesn't need that unnecessary aggro. And also, it's not conducive, I think, for Max in winning even more championships in the future. The best way, if you want to win loads of championships in a row, the best way to do it is be obviously in the or one of the best cars, but it's to have the team basically be built around you, like it was with Michael Schumacher at Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel at Red Bull, Hamilton at Mercedes. In after obviously Rosberg left. That's the best way if you want to win loads of championships. And I think Max would rather put himself into a situation like that, or keep himself in a situation like that where he is at Red Bull, where the team's built around him. Because, all he's got to wait for at that point is the car to become good enough for him to win races and win championships. So, yeah. Anyway, I will come back to your comments soon. So keep them coming, guys, in the chat. Make sure to keep smashing the like button. We're on 27 likes. Let's try and get up to 40 plus likes if we can in the next, 17 minutes, as we're only 17 and a half minutes away from the start of qualifying. So make sure to smash that like button. Anyway, let me just hide that countdown and go through the teams and just round up quickly how they should be doing in this session. The fight for pole is going to be a lot closer for McLaren than I think a lot of people are expecting. I think McLaren know Max Verstappen is going to be in there and it's going to be very close with the McLarens. But if possible, a front row lockout is what McLaren need. If they can get that, even if Max has an amazing start to the race tomorrow, McLaren should still win the race. So, yeah, McLaren front row lockout must be the aim, but it will not be as easy as maybe a lot of people think it is. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull absolutely can take pole today. He is close enough. He has got enough pace within himself compared to Piastri and Norris that he can do the job and get pole position. It will be, though, incredibly close. It's going to be hundredths of a second, maybe even thousandths of a second, deciding who gets on pole position here. So, yeah, Max Verstappen, as long as he produces his absolute best... sorry. As long as he produces his absolute best laps in qualifying, then he's got a chance. No doubt about it. I think he's got more of a chance here than he did probably at Suzuka, and about as much of a chance here at pole as he did in Miami. And look what happened at those Grand Prix. Yuki Tsunoda, by the way, should be fighting to get into the top 10. Whether he does or not, we'll have to see. Personally, I think he will miss out, but that is the area where Tsunoda should be fighting, is to get into the top 10. And it's going to be very close to get into that top 10. The midfield looking very, very quick and very close. Ferrari do not have the pace to fight for pole. They have the pace probably only at best to fight for 4th or 5th on the grid. Of course, that's not good enough for them, but that is just where they're at right now. Leclerc is their best hope if they are to get, say, a second row grid position for tomorrow's Grand Prix. For Lewis Hamilton, as long as he makes the top 10, given his lack of pace at the minute, that would be good enough. But there is definitely a chance that one Ferrari will miss Q3 at one of Ferrari's home races. For Mercedes, their pace is good, it's just not pole position level good. I think George Russell will be probably 2 to 3 tenths of a second away from pole position, which is not that bad. It's not close enough really to be fighting for pole. That is about as far off as I think Mercedes are. But yeah, I don't think they have enough to be fighting for pole position. But 4th, 5th on the grid with both cars absolutely is doable. And if Max Verstappen or Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris had a horrible Q3, maybe a top 3 is doable for one of their drivers. Most likely George Russell, who has been consistently quicker this weekend for Mercedes. So watch out for them. It's not, not impossible they could get a good grid position, but it is not quite that likely that they will be, say, in the top 3. Now onto the midfield. Aston Martin, still absolute dog shit car and probably the slowest this weekend. Alpine, very quick car. Pierre Gasly has always been fast here and should be in the top 10 this weekend in qualifying. Whether Colapinto, though, can get into the fight and whether he can even get into the top 10, it's going to be interesting. If he can get into the top 10, then that is a great debut for Alpine. But we will see where he ultimately ends up. But Pierre Gasly is Alpine's best hope. And if he can really pull out a special lap, Gasly could end up maybe even on the 3rd row of the grid. We'll see how he gets on. For Haas, there is an outside chance of a top 10 for, say, Oliver Behrman. Definitely not impossible. Unrealistic, though, I think, to expect it. So we'll see how they do. Oliver Behrman, if he keeps up what he's been doing so far, then he'll probably end up in the higher echelons of Q2. But yeah, Q3 might just be a stretch too far for the Haas team. Racing Bulls, though, at least of Isaac Hadjar, looking very, very quick. Hadjar's been on it all weekend. Great to see the cars looking good as well. And Hadjar is absolutely one of the dark horses for qualifying. He could cause a real surprise in this session. I think definitely could out-qualify one of the Ferrari cars. Maybe even both. He is definitely in the fight this weekend for maybe even a 3rd row grid position. So watch out for Hadjar. He is looking very, very quick. Lawson has got to step up his performance. He is or has been miles off the pace a lot of the time this weekend, which is not good enough because I still think his seat in Formula 1 is still under threat. Williams, I've got a good car, but I'm not sure it's quite good enough for them to be getting both cars into the top 10 like they did in Miami. I think they'll get one car in, but both cars in, that would be some effort if they were to do that. Very close once again it is between Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon. I still think Sainz really should be ahead of Albon. Sainz is slowly getting better at finding the limits of the Williams car and getting to grips with the Williams car. He's definitely getting better. I think this session, though, will absolutely show whether he is making still clear progress. But Williams, they will be in the top 10. We'll see how many cars, though, are in the top 10 for them. And then Sauber, last of all. And Sauber probably will be ahead of Aston Martin. But I would be surprised if they got any of their cars into Q2. Both Aston Martins and both Saubers pretty likely to be eliminated in Q1. But here is, guys, a reminder of my full top 10 qualifying prediction. I think Max Verstappen just about will take pole position for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. Piastri, I'm going to go 2nd. Lando Norris 3rd. Russell 4th. Leclerc 5th. And then Antonelli 6th. Gasly 7th. Hadjar 8th. Hamilton 9th. And Carlos Sainz P10. That's my top 10. It's very hard to predict, honestly. Obviously, there's a poll running in the chat where you guys can predict your top 10. Let me know who you think will be on poll. and who will be wherever on the grid. Anyway, we have got about 10 minutes to go until qualifying is underway. So give me your final thoughts, guys, ahead of this qualifying session. For Abamas, do you even want pole here? Yeah, I would say you do. If you look at the history of winners here, what was it? Last year, obviously, Max won from pole. 2022, Max won from pole. 2021, yeah, Max from third went from third to first at the first corner. It was obviously wet for the start. 2020, Valtteri Bottas was on pole, led for the first few laps, but then he picked up damage to his car and ended up losing that race. But I think he probably would have won it if it wasn't for that damage. So you want pole here, because if you get a good enough start, you can block off the track enough to maintain your lead into turn one, because these cars are quite big, especially as it narrows down to turn one. So yeah, I think pole, it's not 100% obviously guaranteed that if you get pole you're going to win, like it's going to be next week in Monaco, but pole position is absolutely something you want. As just watching Leclerc getting his helmet on. Leclerc obviously was third on the grid for last year's Grand Prix. If he ended up third today, I think he would be incredibly happy with that. Asterisk says Stroll to go in Q1. Yeah, absolutely. I would not be shocked whatsoever if that happens. Rook says asks thoughts on Pirelli bringing the C6 tyre for this weekend. Good. We've been wanting softer compounds of tyre, and they brought it. So yeah, thank you, Pirelli. And hopefully that will allow for a 2-stop race tomorrow, which I wouldn't say is a guarantee, but it's definitely possible that we'll get a 2-stop race tomorrow. You have to remember the pit lane loss at Imola is quite big, which does dissuade you from pitting an extra time, because I think it's 26, 27 seconds to pit here at Imola. So yeah, pitting more than once is not necessarily the thing you want to be doing, but again, because of that extra pit lane loss. Space Law says, I'm just hoping for some drama. Pretty much the same for me. Jane says maybe probably should bring C6 every race so Chaz HD would be happy. I mean, if you look at, not just me, but the majority of people that criticise Pirelli tyres, I think the number one thing we've all wanted is more pit stops and softer tyres bringing to the Grand Prix. And, the softer tyres they bring, the better for us. So, yeah. As we've got just over 5 more minutes. I'll see if I can find a couple more comments and then we'll get on to the session. Serigara says it'd be funny if Verstappen and let's say Tsunoda at Aston Martin next year. I think honestly next year Alonso definitely will be at Aston Martin, because if Max decides not to come to Aston Martin next year and maybe waits until 2027 or decides not to come at all, Aston Martin want to make sure they've got a top driver in their car, so that if all this work going into next year's car pays off, that they've got a driver that can extract pretty much the most from it. So I think Alonso definitely will be in the car next year. Who his teammate will be, I think it will probably be Lance Stroll, because I don't think anyone fancies taking the risk of joining Aston Martin, because even if the car is better next year, we don't know how much better next year it's going to be. It should be better, again, than this year's car. But how much better? Who knows? We have no idea how next year is going to play out and what the pecking order is going to be. So we'll see. But I think, guys, as the F1 intro is just playing now on the broadcast, it is time to get into qualifying. So let me just go through a final couple things before we get this session underway. Firstly, the championship standings. Oscar Piastri goes into this Grand Prix weekend leading by 16 points over Lando Norris. Max Verstappen in third absolutely needs pole position here if he can get it, because he is starting to lose grip on this championship battle. George Russell just behind in fourth. He also needs a really strong qualifying. And then you got Leclerc in fifth, 40 points behind Russell. Never mind the leader Piastri, where he's nearly, I think, 80 points behind at this point. Antonelli sixth, Hamilton seventh, Alex Albon eighth, and only 11 points behind Lewis Hamilton. What a season Albon has had. Esteban Ocon in ninth, and then Lance Stroll level on points in 10th. And on the constructors' side, McLaren just over 100 points clear of Mercedes. McLaren, I think, at this point have pretty much wrapped up the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes in second. The decently clear are now a Red Bull in third. Ferrari only 11 points behind Red Bull in fourth. Williams comfortable in fifth. Haas in sixth. Aston Martin seventh. Racing Bulls eighth. Alpine ninth. And Sauber in 10th. But let's go through some of the top teams and some key stats regarding these teams going into the session. McLaren, their last pole at Imola was 20 years ago with Kimi Räikkönen, a Grand Prix they actually would fail to win. They have taken 3 poles at Imola since 2000. None of them have been since the return to this track in 2020. Those poles were in the year 2000, 2001, and 2005. Last year, they were second and fifth. Piastri, though, who started fifth, did actually qualify or finish second in qualifying, but had a 3-place penalty for impeding another driver. So they were actually second and third in qualifying before Piastri's penalty was applied. We'll see if they end up with the same result here. Red Bull, of course, they were the successful team here last year, their last pole being last year with Max Verstappen. They've taken 2 poles at Imola since 2020. The last 2 poles at this Grand Prix have been Red Bulls, and last year qualified 1st and 11th, and it may be the same for them this weekend. Ferrari's last pole at Imola was in 2006 with Michael Schumacher. That was actually the pole position from Michael that broke Ayrton Senna's pole record of 65 pole positions at the time. That's how long ago that was. They've also taken 3 poles at Imola since the year 2000, in 2006, 2003, and 2002. Last year, 3rd and 4th on the grid. I think they'd be incredibly happy with that if they got that today. And for Mercedes, their last pole at Imola was in 2021 with Lewis Hamilton. They've had 2 poles here since 2020, in 2020 and 2021. Last year, though, 6th and 8th they were in qualifying. It should be a bit better today. But let's get into this qualifying session. And Q1 is very close to getting underway. Of course, Q1, 18 minutes long. I'll sync up the timer at the 17-minute mark. And we'll be knocking out the bottom 5 drivers, whoever ends up as the bottom 5 drivers in this session. As the crowd awaits. Plenty of Ferrari fans around, of course, who will support their team through thick and thin, especially the very thick of the last 17 years without a championship. as the green light goes on and we are underway for qualifying at Imola. As there's plenty of people looking over the pits in the VIP areas. As we're looking on board with Lewis Hamilton, who is just waiting for the cars ahead of him to leave the pit lane. But yeah, with how soft the tyres are, the C6 is the softest, and then you've got the C5 and the C4. You're not going to really want to do two push laps, two fast laps in a row on the same tyre, because I don't think you'll keep up the pace. And it's hot enough out there, so I don't think there's any track temperature issues. And there you go. 17 minutes remain in Q1. Hello to Crystal Racing, by the way. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, let's get into this. As we're now seeing Leclerc coming out on soft compound tyres to start his qualifying. Leclerc was in the running to possibly win this Grand Prix 3 years ago when Ferrari were probably the quickest team on the grid at that point of the season. But then it all fell apart. And really, this was that year. This was the Grand Prix where the momentum turned in Red Bull's favour, where Max was able to win the sprint race, start on pole for the actual race, go on to win it comfortably. Leclerc made a big mistake whilst in third, and then ended up finishing down in 6th place. And that was the race that, again, turned the momentum in Red Bull's favour, and Ferrari never could turn it back around in their favour. As Lewis Hamilton just warming his tyres up as he goes through the Variante Alta chicane. And obviously this track, one of the first tracks on the calendar where we can actually call it by the real name and not just the turn number. The final two corners being the two Ravazzas, of course, which are crucial for getting your lap right. As here comes Lewis Hamilton. Pole position, by the way, should be today a low 1 minute 14. Anywhere between, say, a 1:14.0 and a 1:14.2. If anyone can do a lap time like that, you're either going to be on pole or you're going to be very close to pole position. So we'll keep an eye on that. The quickest time in this session should be a 1, probably 15, a low 1:15. Like a 1:15.1 or a 1:15.2. As Bortoletto has just gone quickest on a 1:16.6, which is quite slow. And way too slow if he wants to get through to Q2, as Lewis Hamilton continues on his first lap. So yeah, Bortoletto is at the top. Lance Stroll has just gone second. Alonso now quickest on a 1:16.2, which is a bit more like it. And here comes Lewis Hamilton, who should go quickest. And he doesn't. Even though there's a purple middle in the final sector, he goes a couple hundredths of a second slower than Alonso. So that's a poor first lap from Hamilton. Should be a lot quicker than Alonso. As Albon goes quicker than Alonso by a few hundredths of a second. So some of the teams maybe on scrub tyres. Maybe that's why Albon and Hamilton aren't much quicker than Alonso than they should be. As Carlos Sainz has gone fourth. As here comes Charles Leclerc, who only goes fifth on a 1:16.5, which is an absolutely terrible lap time. And then after Leclerc, you've got Bortoletto, Stroll, Behrman, Hulkenberg, and Ocon. So we've got 10 times on the board so far. Here is world champion Max Verstappen, who took pole a year ago. And this is definitely a circuit that he is currently ruling. He won here, or he's won the last 3 races here at Imola in both wet and dry conditions. As he's already 1/4 of a second up on Albon after the first sector. So yeah, already starting very well. And as we know with Max, tends to bang in sometimes his quickest lap on his first lap as yellow flag. And Yuki Tsunoda has ended his qualifying session with an absolutely awful accident. So red flag with 12 minutes and 13 seconds left on the clock, and that is into the Villeneuve chicane. Through the exit of the Villeneuve chicane, he has clearly lost it, and he has absolutely smashed his car to bits. So Tsunoda out of qualifying. That is not what you need. Your Tsunoda. He was just starting to build some good form, and then he's gone and smashed it to pieces. Absolutely awful there from Tsunoda. But yeah, we'll just wait for a replay here to see why he... And the only thing I can think is that he took too much curb and the car just violently spun around. So here we go. So into the entry of the Villeneuve chicane. The first part is a left, and yeah, he takes too much curb. And he actually flipped over. Yeah, he took too much curb, unsettled the car, hit the barrier, and he actually flipped over, landed upside down, and then it rolled back over. So yeah, he is very lucky with that accident. That could have been a lot worse. And he's got out of the car. He's all okay, and that is remarkable because that was a very violent accident. Hit the barrier whilst going through the air. The car rolled. Then he landed upside down, but he hit the ground so hard that it then flipped back over. Yeah, that's probably I think quite far the biggest accident of the season we have seen. And yeah, we have a red flag with 12 minutes and 13 seconds to go. And that is quite clearly from Tsunoda, driver error. He on the entry to the Villeneuve chicane, you're supposed to only really put your left front wheel on that curb, that entry curb. He basically ran over the entry curb with the underneath of his car and took way too much of it. And that was purely just greediness, trying to take way too much time. And I know, at the similar circuit, it has been said before, and it is true. If you don't attack the curbs, you do leave a lot of time on the table. But that is attacking the curbs to a ridiculous amount. And yeah, he is paid for that silly mistake. Just pushing way too hard on that, first run of qualifying. I mean, if you want to take that type of risk, do it in Q3. Don't do it in, first lap of qualifying in Q1. That is quite ridiculous. Yeah, we'll wait till Tsunoda's car is removed. And then we'll be back underway, and I'll sync up the timer at the 12-minute mark once we are back underway. And yeah, let's see if I can read out some of your comments whilst we wait. By the way, cheers for we're on pretty much 40 likes. Let's try and get up to say 50 likes if we can in these next few minutes. So yeah, if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. Space Law saying Webber would be proud. Crystal says, I hope Red Bull don't rush Hadjar onto the second seat. Yeah, I really hope they don't put him in that car because, I mean, if Tsunoda is not going to deliver these big, fantastic results that they want him to, then Isaac won't either because Tsunoda, I'm pretty sure, is better than Hadjar. As yeah, the Red Bull car just being took away by the tractor. Barrier doesn't look too damaged. So barrier should be fine. Let's see if I can find some other. Turbo Power saying Norris needs to get pole. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think out of the two McLaren drivers, Norris definitely needs pole more than Oscar does because Oscar is already confident. He's in form. Lando needs to get in form as soon as possible, and getting pole today absolutely would give him, a bit of confidence around, a track that is not the easiest. This is a proper racetrack where, as a driver, you've got to really show just how good you are. So, yeah, if Lando can get pole, then that would be massive, I think, for him. But we'll see we'll see what happens. But I think, also it's massive for Max Verstappen today. I think he also needs pole because really, if Max is going to win a race at the minute, he needs to be really at worst on the front row, but really on pole to get it because in a race situation, McLaren are even quicker than they are in qualifying. So Max is also in desperate need of a great result today. When for Piastri, I think for Piastri, as long as he ends up on at least the front row, then I don't think it's really too much of a bother for him. I mean, look at the last Grand Prix Miami. Oscar was fourth on the grid and he still won the race comfortably. So, yeah. I think Oscar has got to that point where he doesn't need necessarily any more to win every race. He can win, if he doesn't win here, he can just win next weekend in Monaco and it, be fine. He just needs to make sure that when he doesn't win Oscar, he consistently is, right there. As there is actually a bit of damage to the barrier, but I don't think it's massive. They're just stitching the barrier up to make sure that it's not going to fall apart on its own. But yeah, Lando, I think, in desperate need of a pole position here. Is a replay of Tsunoda, and yeah, attacked the Villeneuve chicane way too hard, and then violently spun around, hit the barrier, flipped, and yeah, it all thankfully came to an end the right way up, and he was all good. And Tsunoda, if you're wondering, is absolutely fine. Maybe a slight bit shaken, but he is all good. Let's see if there's any other comments. Bram saying confidence until Oscar Piastri gets him into turn one. Yeah, I mean, knowing Lando at the minute, that's probably what would happen. He would, take the pole, but then he would throw it away into the first corner, and then Oscar would, pick up the win. As Lawson, they're just showing on the radio him asking if Yuki was okay. Of course, them two incredibly good friends, as you may know if you watched some previous episodes of Drive to Survive. Those two have been very close friends for a few years. And yeah, we're just waiting for the session to get back underway, which should be in the next few minutes. I don't think it'll be much longer until we're back underway. Remember, by the way, with Lando Norris, Lando took pole, of course, in Melbourne. A brilliant pole at that. He has not had pole position since then. He has only had that as his pole position. Was second on the grid last time in Miami. But then was 10th in Saudi Arabia, 6th in Bahrain. What was it? 3rd in Shanghai. He's not been good in qualifying this year as Lando. He's been very inconsistent and I think quite poor in qualifying. And it's been a big reason why he's, not quite been as estimated time of resumption, 16:20 local time, which is in 3 minutes. That's only an estimated time of resumption, though, which is what Mercedes in Bahrain fell for. That came up, that message of estimated time of resumption, and Mercedes immediately went, let their cars out of the garage into the pit lane, even though no signal had been given for an actual confirmed restart time. So no team is allowed to come back out yet until there is a confirmed restart time. As the sun coats this Imola circuit, beautiful Imola circuit, that it's actually, this year is the final year of its contract. And this might be the last race at Imola we get for maybe a couple years or maybe even for a long time, I'm afraid. As Liberty continue to pursue street circuits. And there you go. Q1 will resume in 2 minutes' time. So, once the session's underway, I'll get the timer back on screen for you guys. And I'll sync it up at the 12-minute mark. We've only got 10 lap times on the board. Albon quickest on a 1:16.1, and then Alonso second, Hamilton third, and then Sainz, Leclerc, Bortoletto, Stroll, Behrman, Hulkenberg, and Ocon rounding out the rest of the field. Not really proper time so far. Even that quickest time from Albon of a 16.1, that's still quite a bit slower than I think even Williams could go. I think Williams in this session could probably do a mid 1:15. So there is quite a bit more pace out there. And yeah, we'll just wait till this session is back underway. That's pretty much all the cars are parked up in the pit lane, waiting for the green light to come on, which will be momentarily. As Colapinto is the first at the head of the queue. As he continues to wait. Should be any moment now when that green light comes on. And there you go. So we are back underway for qualifying at Imola. And there you go. 12 minutes remain in Q1. And yeah, as Rux has just said in the chat, Alpine have accidentally sent Colapinto out into the pit lane. With the start time only being an estimation, so they've done the same thing what Mercedes did in Bahrain. So that will be at least a one-place grid penalty for Colapinto. So yeah. As we're looking at Hamilton, the Ferrari there, now looking at Alonso in the Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso, of course, has won this Grand Prix before. 20 years ago, we had the famous Alonso-Schumacher battle for the win, which Alonso just about held on to win for Renault. And that is Fernando's only win at Imola, as Michael Schumacher would win the next year. And the next year, 2006, that was the final race here at Imola for Formula One until 2020. Alonso has had horrible luck here at Imola since we came back. I don't think he's really had any good results. And Isaac Hadjar, they've just shown a stat that he's never been knocked out in Q1 before. And the only driver on the grid to have not been knocked out in Q1 as yet. Colapinto's been noted now, so he'll definitely get a penalty at some point, probably after qualifying later in the day. Well done, Alpine. And another thing I didn't discuss with Alpine, of course, is Oliver Oaks, their team principal 2 weeks ago, is no longer their team principal. It's now Flavio Briatore, because Oliver Oaks is part of some scandal involving his brother and Russian oligarchs, it appears. I'm not going to get too much into it, though, because it seems like an absolute shit show. But anyway, let's look at this lap from Hadjar. Hadjar's been super quick all weekend, and he is a dark horse this weekend. And decent first sector for the Frenchman. He's been easily, for me, the most impressive driver of the season. I did not think Hadjar would really do anything this season, if I'm being honest. I didn't really have high hopes for the car either, but he has been, I think, very good. As Colapinto has just gone up to third place. Hadjar, so far on this lap, doing well. Probably going to go into the top 3 maybe himself. Again, though, these laps are not that quick. As Lawson goes 5th. And here comes Isaac Hadjar to the line, who goes 3rd. So let me just do that. Hadjar 3rd. We're looking here at Oliver Behrman, who has already done a lap, but he's on a new one. As the only drivers we're waiting for now to complete laps are Verstappen, Gasly, Antonelli, Russell, and the 2 McLarens of Norris and Piastri. Of course, Tsunoda in 20th. He is out of the session, as Behrman's not really on a better lap, to be honest, compared to what he's done before, as the 2 Haas's at the back at the minute. As Carlos Sainz does a 1:59, which is a bit closer to the type of pace I was expecting in this session. So Sainz at the top. Behrman stays in 12th. Currently a Williams 1-2 at Imola. Last time Williams won this Grand Prix was 2001. Which was actually the first win they had with BMW. With Ralf Schumacher. As Pierre Gasly now goes quickest to 1:59. Proving how quick he is in a quick Alpine car. As Stroll improves quite a bit, up to 4th place. Alonso now goes quickest on a 1:15.6. That's a very good lap time from Fernando. And yeah, quarter of a second quicker than Gasly. That's a super time from Alonso. As Antonelli goes 3rd, which is not that good from him, to be honest. Quarter of a second off the pace of Alonso. Here comes George Russell, who goes 2nd, 10th and a half behind Alonso. That is, what a lap Alonso has done there. As Max Verstappen now does a 1:15.1. What a time from Verstappen. And that is easily good enough to see him into Q2. And that is the type of lap time I was expecting at the very top in this session. As Hamilton only goes 9th, as his teammate is in 7th. Ferrari almost a second off the pace. As here comes Oscar Piastri. Looks very good with the final 2 Ravazzas. To the line. 3/10 off and goes 2nd. Yeah, Max has already laid down a marker with that lap time. Even though the pole position will be faster than a 1:15.1, quite a bit quicker, that is still a marker laid down of just how quick Max is. For the rest of the top 10, you've got Verstappen, Piastri, Alonso, Russell, Gasly. Norris is 6th. Not a great start from him. So Norris in 6th. And then Antonelli 7th, Sainz 8th, Leclerc 9th, Albon 10th, Lewis Hamilton 11th. So 9th and 11th only for Ferrari. Stroll 12th, Hadjar 13th, Colapinto 14th, Lawson 15th. And in the drop zone, Hulkenberg, Bortoletto, Behrman, and Ocon. Tsunoda, of course, is definitely out. He obviously crashed out of the session. Here's a replay of Lando at not quite sure what corner that is. Oh, it's the Tosa, the hairpin, just after the Villeneuve chicane, and he ran slightly wide. Did Lando. As here is Leclerc at the chicane where he spun a couple years ago, and he's having a slight oversteer moment. There was the Monegasque, of course, his home Grand Prix next week. Not going to be as fun as it was last year, I'm afraid. As that Stroll running through the gravel slightly on the exit of the corner after the hairpin. Yeah, Verstappen doesn't have to go out again with the lap time he's done, 1:15.1. I don't think Piastri really does have to go out again either. Alonso 3rd on a 1:15.6. That is an incredible lap time from Alonso. And I think he is absolutely going to be going through to Q2, no doubt. The teams that really should be improving, though, Norris on a 1:15.9 has got to improve. That's not good enough from him. And then, the 2 Ferraris are in the 1:16s, the low 1:16s. That is absolutely nowhere near good enough. They need at least, I would say, a half a second if they want to get through to Q2 comfortably. Yeah, Ferrari are at risk here of maybe a Q1 elimination, as Antonelli there being blocked from by the 2 Saubers who both came out in a hurry. Obviously, both Saubers in the drop zone. I think Sauber, I wouldn't be surprised if they have their cars eliminated. Haas, though, really should be doing better than 18th and 19th. I think there's definitely more potential in their cars. As we've got about 2 minutes 15 to go. And there is Peter Sauber in the Sauber pit, still coming to the Grand Prix. Good to see. Obviously, Sauber, this is their final year as Sauber. Next year, they will be Audi. Hulkenberg noted for an unsafe release. I don't think that's going to be a penalty. Probably be a fine of some sort for the Sauber team. But yeah, good to see Peter Sauber still coming to these Grand Prix. As Bortoleto absolutely throwing his car into the Villeneuve chicane, and he got the payback for it. And a brilliant first sector time. A third of a second up on Liam Lawson. That's a great start from the Brazilian, who's had a okay start to his career. The car he's driving, it really is not helping his results. I thought he did well in Miami to out-qualify Hulkenberg, but yeah, the car is not helping, I think, showcase his talent, really. But he's looking really good on this lap, really being aggressive with the car, and he's getting the payback for it. He's still up on the time Lawson has done, which he needs to obviously improve on if he wants to get through. As Lando Norris only goes up to 5th on his final run in Q1. Here comes Bortoleto. 15th he goes. Not sure that's going to be good enough, though, to get him through. As Lawson, Hulkenberg goes too wide into the gravel through the middle of the two Ravatzes, and that's going to cost him. And Hulkenberg stays in 17th. So Bortoleto is going to out-qualify Hulkenberg here for the second race running. As there's Mattia Binotto, head of the Audi F1 project. As here comes Ocon, who's on a better lap. Will this get him through to the next part of qualifying? No, it only puts him up to 18th. As we've got a yellow flag out there. Oh, big crash, and that is for Colapinto. He's ripped the front right corner off his car. I don't know what corner that's at. He says he's okay, but that is the session absolutely over now. As that Argentinian supporter in the crowd holds her head in her hands. But yeah, Colapinto, he was going to get a penalty anyway, but that guarantees that, he's absolutely out of qualifying. As one driver that did get through right before the red flag is Oliver Bearman. He was in 19th and he made it up to 10th. So Bearman is through. As Colapinto, he's absolutely destroyed the front end of his car. Looks like it's the entry to Aqua Minerale, I think it is. Where I think George Russell famously crashed under a safety car. Might be that area, I'm not quite sure. But I'll just wait to see a replay of this accident before I read out the results. And no, it's not at Aqua Minerale because Hamilton's going through that area and there's no sign of Colapinto. So it's somewhere else. We'll see in a moment. But both Ferraris made it through, even though it was only 11th and 13th. They were on final laps, but I don't think they needed, in the end, to do them. So yeah, both Ferraris are through, but not looking quick whatsoever. But Max Verstappen, the star of the show in Q1. Here we go. So it's through the first couple corners into turn 1 and into turn 2. And he ran slightly too wide into 3, touched the grass, spun around and smashed into the barriers. And yeah, just carried slightly too much speed and bang. So Colapinto, even though he made it through to Q2, he is out of qualifying. So into Q2, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso, what a lap from him. Russell, Norris, Gasly, Antonelli, Sainz, Leclerc, Bearman, Albon, Hamilton, Stroll, Hadjar, and technically Colapinto. And knocked out in Q1, Gabriel Bortoleto, Liam Lawson, Nico Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon, and Yuki Tsunoda. As the start of Q2 will be delayed, it has been announced. So we will have to wait, obviously, for the car to be removed and the barrier to be absolutely made safe. So we'll see when we're back underway. As actually, Lance Stroll ended up getting into P4 of Aston Martin, secretly got tons of pace that they've been hiding all weekend. And then after that, it was what? Russell, Norris, Gasly, Antonelli, Sainz, then Behrman 10th. And then, yeah, I think the rest is then correct. See, Aston Martin, a 1:15.6 with Alonso, 1:15.8 with Stroll. Let's see if they can, if Aston Martin can keep that up. Not that lap time, because it obviously won't be good enough in Q2 if they keep doing that lap time. But let's see if they keep improving. Because if they can, then, you know, especially with Alonso, then a top 10 might be possible. But yeah, we'll have to wait until this session gets underway. Behrman's time has just been deleted, says Rook. So Bortoletto now 15th. Well, that will put Behrman down to 19th, I believe. So yeah, Bortoletto through to Q2. Brilliant effort from him. His lap looked really good when we were watching it. And he's out-qualified Hulkenberg for the second race in a row. Again, I think Bortoletto's had a decent season. If you look at his head-to-head in qualifying with Hulkenberg, it's impressive. But because he's in that car, nothing really looks that impressive, if you know what I mean. Because it's just not a good car. So, yeah. But just having a look at social media to see if there's any news I can quickly bring you guys. As they're just showing a replay of Colapinto entering the fast lane of the pit lane when he wasn't supposed to, which is what's going to lead to a penalty on top of what he's got. So Colapinto will start the race in probably 16th place. So Lawson will end up starting from 15th. So Bortoletto in the Sauber is going to be at least 14th, which that is a good effort from Bortoletto. Real good effort. But no, I can't quite see anything at the moment online, as they just showed a slow-mo of Jack Doohan, who is at the track, slowly walking through the paddock. So, yeah. Anyway, we await the beginning of Q2. By the way, we're on, 53 likes now. Let's try and get up to, say, 70 likes in, say, the next 20 minutes if we could. That'd be great. So if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. Is the helicopter showing that there is rain in the distance? There is rain south of the circuit, but it's not supposed to come to the circuit at any point. So should be fine. The weather. As here is Behrman, who initially got through and then had his lap time deleted, not for a track limit violation, I don't think. And Behrman asking why am I last on the thing, and they say, yeah, we're checking only on the board. I didn't do a lap. Now it's said. So basically, they've deleted his lap because they think he did it or he completed it after the red flag was shown. But looking at the replay, it looks like he finished the lap before the red flag was shown. So I think Behrman might end up back into Q2 here. If that replay, if what I saw there was correct, then Behrman should be in Q2 here, as they've just said Q2 is going to start in 5 minutes time. So hopefully that's enough time to decide this. And yeah, Colapinto going off at the Tamburello chicane. And he ended up in the barriers right where Giancarlo Fisichella crashed once for Renault, but it was a lot heavier a crash than what Fisichella had that time, which I think was about 20 years ago. So yeah, we'll keep our eye on this Behrman situation. By the looks of the replay, he should be in Q2 here because it looked like the red flag came after he crossed the line. And there would have been a yellow flag before then, but it only would have been a yellow in that part of the track, which would have been turn 1, 2, and 3. So, and he wasn't there yet. He was coming out the final corner, crossing the line, which is, quite a bit further back behind. So, hopefully some justice is done here. Sky just interviewing Liam Lawson, who's had another shocking qualifying performance. I honestly, if there's anyone who should be dropped mid-season, I think Liam Lawson has got to be at the top of that list. Liam has been absolutely awful this season. That's, another awful result in what is a good car. He was awful in the Red Bull. Yes, the Red Bull is difficult to drive, but it wasn't that difficult to the point where he, shouldn't be any higher than, what was it, like last. It was ridiculous just how bad he was. And then since he's came to Racing Bulls, he's not done anything, really. So, yeah. If there's anyone you could argue should be dropped mid-season, Liam Lawson is probably that man. Bram says I'm in an Oz F1 Discord. Let's just say the comments are interesting. Sure they are. Yeah, according to the F1 site has said that the red flag popped up just as he was crossing the line, but I don't, as they've just said start of Q2 will be delayed, so they've just delayed the restart. That didn't look like what they've just said. And then Haas have just said we're currently in talks with race control regarding Ollie's final time lap. If they want to show another replay, that'd be great. But it looked to me like he crossed the line before the red flag was shown. But yeah, I'm just looking. Here we go. And yeah, he crosses the line, and then the red flag shows. But it's after he crossed the line. He crosses the line probably what, a second, maybe 2 seconds. He crosses the line before the red flag comes out. The red lights are on the on the lighting system they use for the start. The red lights are on, but that's because that means the checkered flag has fallen in terms of the timer has ran out. That's not a red flag. So to me, Behrman should be in Q2. That looks pretty clear to me. So I think that might be what the delay is for. Is just to make sure that they don't fuck this up. Because if you end up eliminating Behrman, he could potentially qualify in the top, say, 11 or 12 on the grid. So it could really cost him massively, this. So yeah, we continue to wait. And yeah, race control just announced lap time of car 87, which is Oliver Behrman, is under review. But looking at it, it looks like Behrman, he crossed the line about a second or two before the red flag. So he should be in this session. But let me see if there's any comments. Paul Sonoda was hoping he would be highest, is one that you know. Yeah, I was thinking maybe Sonoda at best could maybe get himself in the top 10, but yeah, just ridiculous pushing that hard that early. As Jonathan Wheatley and Mattia Bonotto talking on the Sauber pit wall. Of course, Jonathan Wheatley with Sauber. Bonotto, head of the project, and is it Mike Crack is the guy from Aston Martin. I think he's with them now as well. So building up a bit of a team. Or Audi, cannot wait to see what Audi do next year and where they will, what their starting point will be. Let's say. As the crowd obviously awaiting the session to Q2 to get underway, but we're just waiting for this review to take place. And I think what the confusion is there's more than one finish line. You've got the actual timing line is just around the kink of the pit straight, but then there's another one where the actual start lights are, where like the front of the grid will start from tomorrow's Grand Prix. Where that line is, where the pole position is, that's not the actual finishing line here for qualifying. The finishing line is just before that. So I think that's what the confusion here is with Behrman's lap is, you know, is whether he crossed the correct line, but it looked like he did pretty clearly. Yeah, I'll let you know when we're gonna get restarted here. But uh, no news as of yet. As the grandstand's pretty much red with the odd Mercedes cap or McLaren cap. Astro saying in the chat, Behrman deserves to be in this season. Colapinto does not. Should promote Bortoletto into this given the circumstances. Rook saying, lol, can't believe it's only in the Q1. Feels like halfway through a Grand Prix. This qualifying session has took way too long so far. If we had had no red flags or delays, we would be we'd actually be about 2 or 3 minutes into Q3 by now, and we've not even started Q2. So yeah, this is we're still going to be here for another probably 40 minutes or so before qualifying's even over. Of course, remember guys, I will stick around for a few minutes after qualifying just to get your quick reactions to the session. But yeah, I really don't know why it's taking this long to review this. It's, if you look at the video evidence, it's pretty obvious that he made the line before the red flag. So what is the hold up? But of course, the FIA take a million fucking years doing everything, and race control is not even the best part. Well, it is the best part of the FIA, because the FIA president lately has been even worse than what the race control and the stewards could even hope to be. I just saw a thing the other day. Apparently, the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem wants new powers to be able to block candidates if he doesn't like them to run against him in the FIA presidential election. Is that not literally just dictatorship? Like, what planet is this guy on to think that he even deserves that level of treatment? As they've just said that Q2 will get back underway in 5 minutes' time. As we still wait as to what's going on with Oliver Behrman. Again, I think he should probably be in Q2 here, but we're still waiting confirmation. So, yeah, let's see if there's any comments in the chat. Not tyrannical at all, lol. Yeah, I just, one, how does he possibly think that's a good idea? Like, how up his own arse is he? But secondly, how is anyone at the FIA going to seriously let him do that? That would be the end of the FIA. Just, yeah, ridiculous. And I do hope that somebody, as they're showing a replay again of this red flag situation, and Behrman, he made the line before the red flag. And the finish line there, the start line where pole position is, again, I don't know if they are confused as to what line is the finish line, but that for qualifying, that is not the finish line. So it's irrelevant whether he made that line, as Bortoleto is coming out into the pit lane. So I can't believe that, if they've actually eliminated Behrman for that. Yeah, I think the FIA fucked that up. I think they have. I think they've if they've seen that video evidence and they're still not going to allow Behrman through, they fucked up majorly, because they forgot what the actual finish line is for qualifying. Or the reason Bortoleto is parked up at the end of the pit lane is because is Sauber trying to force the FIA's hand. So I don't know why it's taking so long. We've seen the evidence; it's clear. So yeah, I don't know what the hold up is here with this Behrman thing. Apparently, the Sky F1 commentators have got it wrong, and they think it's the wrong finish line. Yeah, apparently the Sky F1 team, apparently, I've just seen the Sky F1 team are arguing that Behrman should not make it through. The Sky F1 team clearly are not paying enough attention. They don't know where the fucking timing line is. But it looks like the FIA have also forgot where the timing line is, because they've not allowed Behrman to go through. So I'm sorry, that's complete bullshit. Behrman has just been screwed over by incompetence. That is absolutely scandalous. He crossed the line before, the red flag came out. That is not up for debate. The video evidence shows it. But the FIA have forgot where their own fucking timing line is. Absolute idiots. And when Haas, if they haven't seen the video evidence, they are going to be going mental. And they should. But there you go. Q2 has started. That has really pissed me off, that has. Because to me, that was pretty clear that he should be in this session. So yeah, that's just absolute bullshit as far as I'm concerned. Behrman's been screwed over. But Bortoleto has just done a lap time. I have no idea what it is. Anyway, let's get into this session. That's just fully distracted me. That has. That whole Behrman thing. That's just complete bullshit. Hello, Yanni. Hopefully you're doing well. Says Chaz. Sounds pissed off. I am pissed off because Behrman's been screwed over. And clearly, the FIA or the Sky F1 commentators, apparently, who are arguing that the timing line is where the start line is, they've got it wrong. It's not the timing line, as you'll see in a moment, because if you're watching the session, Max Verstappen's currently on a lap. He's about to come into the Variante Alta chicane, comes through it and goes through it very nicely. You'll see in a moment the timing line is before the actual the line where they start the race from. Behrman crossed the line before the red flag, and they've disallowed him. And Verstappen, yeah, see, crosses the line before the actual line. There's a 1:15 for Verstappen, I think clearly on used tyres there. Yeah, he crossed the line before the actual start line, which is the timing line in qualifying. But for some reason, the FIA have still said that Behrman, the Behrman is out. So yeah, no, I have no clue what. And apparently, the Sky F1 team have mistaken the red lights, which means the checkered flag has fallen and that the timer has ran out. They've mistaken those lights for the red flag lights. So, yeah, absolute fucking stupidity from everyone involved. That's what you pay almost £100 a month for. Sky F1 to completely get wrong something that is like obvious procedural stuff. Anyway, Verstappen in the lead in Q2, Leclerc second, Hamilton third, Bortoleto was in fourth. He's not anymore. He's way down the order now. Because George Russell is in second, I think a lot of these drivers on used soft tyres. Then Russell second, Leclerc third, Hamilton fourth, Isaac Hadjar is up to fifth. Not anymore though, because Lando Norris now goes quickest at a 1:15.2. That's McLaren's quickest time of the not the weekend so far, but of this session at least. And then yeah, Hadjar is sixth. Alonso is in seventh. Alonso though, the time he's done is slower than what he did in Q1, so Alonso can definitely go quicker. Antonelli eighth. Stroll ninth. Aston Martin still looking pretty competitive. Gasly 10th. And then Albon 11th. Bortoleto 12th. And then Oscar Piastri comes to the line and he goes quickest by a couple hundredths of a second. And Piastri now up the top of the timesheets. As we're now just waiting for Carlos Sainz to complete his first Q2 lap. Should really be putting himself in the top 10 as Albon, his teammate, in 12th. Here comes Sainz to the line. And yes, he puts himself up to 9th place. So Williams getting a car in there. So currently your top 10, Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc, Hamilton, Hadjar, Alonso, Sainz and Antonelli. And the drop zone, Stroll, Gasly, Albon, Bortoleto, and of course Colapinto is out of this session. But one thing I do want to quickly look at is I want to see what Haas's reaction is to that. And yeah, I can't see anything at the moment. But that clearly that is clear bullshit. When if anyone looks back at the replay, you can clearly see Behrman uh crosses the line before the red flag comes out. So Behrman has been robbed, and the FIA can go fuck themselves as far as I'm concerned. That is absolute bullshit. Because Behrman maybe could have made the top 10. So, that's very costly. Yeah, that is just absolute rubbish. And even Chris Medland on Twitter said, hopefully the FIA will explain their reasoning after the session. But yeah. Yeah, I'm just sorry. I'm just looking at social media to see, what other reaction there is out there. But yeah, uh that just that's just angered me so much because it's a clear, clearly wrong decision has been made when we've just seen literal video evidence that he did make the line before the red flag came out. It's not one of those subjective decisions. It's literally an objective decision. Did he make the line before the red flag? He did. And they've still disallowed him from participating any further. So, yeah, that has just absolutely pissed me off. And yeah, apparently, looking at Twitter, I'm just seeing some reaction now, or X, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Apparently, Sky F1 have completely forgot where the timing line is, and have also forgot that when the red lights are on the start lights, that means that the session timer has ran out. That doesn't mean that it's a red flag. You'd think they would know this. Dedicated Formula One coverage, and they don't even fucking know that. What a joke. Honestly. Absolute fucking joke. Again, a lot of us pay all that money, and they don't even know that. Yeah, and he says, you can't say fuck themselves, you'll be fine. Thankfully, I'm well away from the the FIA areas and can thankfully say what I want freely. And hopefully one day the drivers can again once the current FIA president is removed. And obviously the FIA president has nothing to do with that situation, but yeah. Anyway, let's try and forget that. But that literally has winded me up so much because that is literally an objective issue and they've somehow got it wrong. Honestly. Incompetence, it's out there a lot more in the world than you think. It really is. I just, yeah, can't believe that. I cannot believe that for 1 second that that's happened. But it has. Can't wait for the FIA's response to fucking that up. They'll probably somehow make some excuse. Because can't possibly admit you've ever done anything wrong, can you? Anyway, let's get into these final laps of Q2. So in the drop zone, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, and Gabriel Bortoleto. Can any of them make it through? Bortoleto definitely won't. So really, it's Stroll, Gasly, and Albon who we need to be looking at. As we're looking at Antonelli, currently in P10. Obviously, this is one of Antonelli's home Grand Prix. And he's not had a great weekend so far, to be honest. And he's only P10 at the moment, but this is his chance to improve on that and make sure of an appearance in Q3. As Antonelli about 4/10 down on Piastri after the first two sectors, so this is a better lap. As Bortoleto has just gone up to 12th place, which is the best he could have done, really. As Antonelli comes through the final two corners and to the line, should make it through, and he does. He goes up to 8th place. Not going to be an absolute sure thing he goes through, though. Lewis Hamilton does not improve his lap, stays in 7th. As Leclerc stays in 6th, so both Ferraris are through. Carlos Sainz, by the way, has done a purple first sector as he understeers his way through Aqua Minerale. And this is a superb lap. He's literally lapping at the same pace as Piastri after the first two sectors as Russell goes 3rd. And here comes Carlos Sainz into the final Ravazes as Albon's on a better lap as well. Can Sainz make sure of a Q3 appearance? Yes, he does by going quickest. A 1:15.1. And he is through to Q3. Well done. What a lap by Sainz as Albon goes up to 7th. What a lap by Albon. Antonelli, by the way, might get eliminated here. He's in P10. And both Stroll and Gasly and Alonso even improving. Both Aston Martins are out there on the mediums instead of the softs. And they're still going faster than Antonelli. As Gasly goes 6th. So Antonelli is out. And one of the Ferraris might be out here as Hamilton has dropped to 10th. Leclerc in 9th as Lance Stroll goes 6th. So Lewis Hamilton is out. Here comes Alonso. He goes 6th. Both Ferraris are out in Q2. What a disaster. And both Aston Martins have made it through on the medium compound, which clearly has lasted better over the lap than the soft. And both Ferraris are out in Q2. And Antonelli in the Mercedes. What an end to Q2 that is. Unbelievable. And that has to be rock bottom for Ferrari this season. After all the hype going into the season, the middle of May at their home Grand Prix Imola, they are 11th and 12th. Disaster at the Scuderia. They've been out-qualified by both Williamses, both Aston Martins, Gasly, Hadjar. Let's not forget to mention Antonelli. Awful. I would say awful effort from Antonelli. He should be getting into Q3, no doubt about it. So poor from him as well. But that is quite incredible. Yeah, I lost for words, as I have been for most of Q2. for many different reasons. Anyway, Q2 is over and done with. Let's go through your drivers who are on their way to Q3. Carlos Sainz, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, George Russell, Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, the two Aston Martins who, out of nowhere, have suddenly got loads of pace. Well done to them. Gasly 8th, well done to him. Isaac Hadjar, well done to him. Alex Albon, well done to him. And knocked out in Q2, both Ferraris at Imola, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton 11th and 12th. Antonelli in the Mercedes out as well in 13th. Bortoletto 14th in the Sauber and Colapinto out as well in 15th. What a qualifying this has been. And what's incredible, so out of the top 4 teams, obviously, it's 2 cars per team for the top 4 teams. 4 of those 8 cars have already been eliminated. So the only cars out there from the top 4 teams we have still are the 2 McLarens, the Red Bull of Verstappen, and the Mercedes of Russell. So on the 3rd row of the grid, we could have anyone, really. Could be the Williamses, the Aston Martins, Gasly, Hadjar. It's the rest of the top 10 after the top 4 is absolutely up for grabs. And I cannot wait to see how this is going to finish out. Is Astro saying rock bottom so far? Indeed. Rock bottom might even come next week in Monaco. Yeah, what a mental, absolutely mental Q2 that is. And that is absolute confirmation that Ferrari stink. And let me just see what the some of the social media reaction is. And yeah, everyone is just amazed with both Ferraris being eliminated. And what didn't help is, I think both drivers in the final sector failed to improve. As is a replay of Leclerc to the Variante Alta chicane. And slight oversteer on the exit, but that wouldn't have really cost him anything. They just didn't have the pace. And now we wait for the final shootout. It will be a 12-minute long session. I'll sync up the timer, of course, at the 11-minute mark. Let me just have a look to see on the poll who is where. And I think I'll finish up the poll because there is a clear winner. 925 votes. Thank you guys for voting so much. I asked you who will take pole position for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. 43% of the vote has gone to Oscar Piastri. 29% for Max Verstappen. 22% for Lando Norris. And then 4% for George Russell. We'll see whether Piastri does take pole, or will it be Verstappen or even Norris? Let's see. Akash asks, how did Aston Martin on mediums beat Ferrari who are on new softs? I think 2 reasons. One, somehow Aston Martin are faster than Ferrari, but not only that, the mediums last better over the lap. In the final sector, it's not dropping away, it's not wearing away like the soft does. So that bit extra is what has allowed them to get through. But I think genuinely Aston Martin are quicker. Which, going into qualifying, I did not think Aston Martin would be this quick. I thought Aston Martin would have both cars knocked out in Q1. They have both cars in Q3. And that's not just a surprise for me. I think everyone is surprised with that. And what is just fitting is Ferrari 11th and 12th. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz, the man who was replaced by Lewis Hamilton, quickest in Q2 in the Williams. If that doesn't sum up Ferrari this season, I don't know what does. It could only happen to the Scuderia. Anyway, Q3 is about to begin as all the cars now filtering out of the garage into the pit lane. Let's see who will take pole. Again, remember, pole position, in my view, should be a low 1 minute 14 lap time. Carlos Sainz did was it 1:15.1, I think it was. So, yeah, I'd be amazed if Carlos Sainz took pole. But yeah, it should be a low 1:14. So if anyone can do a low 1:14, you're either going to be on pole or you're going to be very close to it. As the session has begun, I've missed the syncing up point, so sorry about that. I'll sync it up in 30 seconds time at the 10-minute mark. As we are looking at Lando Norris, who, as I said earlier in qualifying, out of the top 3 in the championship, he needs pole here the most for his confidence. But whether he'll get it is a different story. As we're now looking at Fernando Alonso in Q3. Alonso, remember, has not even scored a point this season. Meanwhile, his teammate Stroll is in the top 10 of the championship. And finally, Aston Martin and Alonso fans have something to cheer about. We'll see where they end up. But our main focus is on the fight for pole, which is between the top 4 of the championship: Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, and Russell. As we look at Lando Norris coming into the first Ravazza to start his first attempt at pole position. Remember, he's not had pole since the Australian Grand Prix 2 months ago. And like I said, he needs pole the most. As DRS open down to the Tamburello chicane. As all slight wiggle through turn 2. There's a car not too far ahead of him that might distract him. But he gets through the Villeneuve chicane absolutely fine. And there's a 23.9 for the first sector, which is good, but I'm not sure it's going to be the best through that part of the lap. And Oscar Piastri immediately confirms that by going nearly a 1/10.5 quicker in the first sector. As here comes Norris into the middle sector. I mean, the lap looks fine. I can't see any obvious issues, but it looks like Piastri is going quicker. Max Verstappen now does a does the purple first sector as Stroll goes quickest. Alonso in second. Hadjar now quickest as Lando Norris does a 1:14.9. That's nowhere near good enough, I'm afraid. And his teammate will surely beat that. As here comes Piastri to the line, who does a 1:14.8. Not much better than Norris. What can Verstappen do as he comes into the final two corners? Verstappen has understeered slightly at the first revat, so that's not helped. As he comes out the final corner to the finish line. And yes, by half a tenth, he puts it on provisional pole. Here comes George Russell, though, who's on a good lap. Out of the final corner. Where can he put the Mercedes? Fourth, only a quarter of a second away from pole. That's a good lap from Russell. As here comes Albon. He's about to finish his lap. Both Williamses on a lap. Obviously, Williams quite a bit further off the pace than the front runners. Carlos Sainz looks like after his first two sectors, he's probably going to go up to P5. What's Albon going to do? Comes to the line and only 8th. He can do a lot better than that, Albon, I'm sure. Here comes Carlos Sainz, though. Who... He only goes 8th as well, so a big drop-off of lap time in that final sector. I don't know if Williams have got old, used tyres on, but was expecting more. So with one run to go in qualifying, Max Verstappen, as I told you, would be right in there in the fight for pole. And yet again, he is. And right now, he is on provisional pole by half a tenth. Ahead of Piastri, Lando a tenth behind in third. That's exactly what I predicted, by the way. And I also predicted Russell in fourth, 2 tenths off. So at the minute, the top 4 is exactly how I predicted in terms of position and the lap or the gap difference between the 4. So Verstappen with 1 lap to go on provisional pole. Piastri second, Norris third, Russell fourth. Isaac Hadjar is currently 5th on the grid. What a result that would be if he could hang on. Stroll 6th, Alonso 7th, and then Sainz 8th, Albon 9th, Gasly 10th. Anyone still could end up in 5th out of the rest of that top 10. It's right up for grabs. But yeah, 5 minutes to go in qualifying. Astro saying no point Lando getting pole, he just wasted it with a rubbish start. Possibly. Nicholas says, what a sad day to be a Ferrari fan. Indeed, it's been sad for quite a while, to be honest. As we're just looking at Pierre Gasly in the Alpine pit. And Ferrari, by the way, finishing 11th and 12th. That means they are the 8th best team in qualifying. 8th best team in qualifying. That is just mental. They were quicker at this track in 2020 compared to the rest of the field than they are today. That is how bad it has got. And there's no guarantee, by the way, that they are going to score, loads of points tomorrow, because those cars ahead of them, they're on that pace. So again, there are no guarantees. Ferrari, they're a midfield team at the minute. Simple reality, I'm afraid. As all the cars now enter the pit lane, as they are all filtering out for this final run. I still think, even though Max is on provisional pole on a 1:14.7, I still think there is a lot more lap time out there. I think the issue, though, is this soft tyre, the C6 compound. is really giving away in the final sector. Just wearing out a lot. And I think that's why we're not getting necessarily the absolute best times from everyone. Because the tyres are falling away in the final sector, and then people are struggling to do their best runs. As Max Verstappen, if he gets this pole position, that will be 3 poles in a row at Imola. And like I said, this is a true driver's circuit. So Max will just prove yet again why he is the best of the best. But Piastri and Norris are still close enough that they can get this pole. As Carlos Sainz here, he's only just left the pit lane with 90 seconds to go. He's going to have to make it round pretty quick. As here is Oscar Piastri, your championship leader. Can he take a crucial pole at Imola? Remember, McLaren have not had pole here at Imola for 20 years. As Piastri into the Villeneuve chicane. Looks very good. And a good first sector. Not the best, but good. It's the middle and final sector where McLaren can really expose Red Bull. The Red Bull is definitely at its best in the first sector. As the lap goes on, though, I do think the McLaren gets better compared to the Red Bull. As Piastri into Acqua Minerale. Keeps it absolutely bang on the track. Doesn't go wide. And he's a 10th up. After the middle sector, purple middle sector, this lap is absolutely the best of what Oscar Piastri has to offer. Oh, there's loads of traffic ahead of him. Will they all get out of the way into Ravazza? One of them does. The other does in the middle. That, if he hasn't been distracted, then that's incredible. But Piastri comes to the line. And he does, by a 10th of a second, go on to pole. But will it be enough? Here comes Norris, who's not even halfway through the lap yet. As Max Verstappen has done an incredible first sector, nearly 2/10 quicker than Piastri. As Lance Stroll, by the way, has gone 5th. Alex Albon now has gone 5th. As Lando Norris, 3.5 off his team out of the middle sector. Norris has thrown it away, I think. Stroll, by the way, has gone 6th on the medium. Aston Martin trying that little strategy again. What's Max done for the middle sector? It's 0.5 off. It's not a personal best. As Lando Norris to the line. Only 3rd. Poor final lap. Might actually get jumped by Russell if he's not careful. Here's Max Verstappen, though. Can Max take pole for the 3rd time here at Imola? To the line. No, he misses out by 0.03 of a second. And Piastri, I think, has done it. As Alonso goes 5th on the medium compound. Here comes Carlos Sainz, who goes 6th. Great effort from Carlos. Here is Russell. He goes 3rd. And Russell did it on the medium as well. So Lando Norris put down to 4th. Awful qualifying by him. Russell gets up to 3rd on the medium. But ultimately, McLaren, for the first time in 20 years, are on pole at Imola. Oscar Piastri takes pole. And that's his first pole position since Bahrain. His 3rd of the season. And the championship leader does it yet again. Max Verstappen 2nd. It's going to be some race tomorrow, though. Max is going to absolutely be going for it in that Red Bull. Russell 3rd. What a brilliant effort by him. Lando 4th. Poor from Lando. He left the door open to be exposed, and he's been exposed yet again. Alonso 5th. It's been a long time since Alonso's been in the top 5 on the grid, but he is for this Grand Prix. 6th for Sainz. Brilliant from him. Brilliant from Albon 7th. Stroll 8th. Great from him as well. Let's give him credit where credit's due. Hadjar 9th and Gasly 10th. Maybe those two will be disappointed. Probably should be with their efforts, but they are still in the top 10. And then the rest of the field, Leclerc, Hamilton, Antonelli, Bortoleto, Colapinto, Lawson, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Behrman, and Tsunoda. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is why I made the video I made a few days ago, which if you haven't checked out, it's in the description of my of this stream. I made a video about why Oscar Piastri is McLaren's best bet for the Drivers' Championship, and that session right there proved exactly why I am correct. And I'm going to just get this poll going as to who do you think is driver of the day for qualifying at Imola. And your options for driver of the day will be Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, George Russell, I'll put in there, and Fernando Alonso, I'm going to put there as well. So let me know who your driver of the day is for qualifying. It's actually tough to say. Even though Piastri's got pole, I still think the McLaren is the best car. So, that does help Piastri quite a bit. And I think Verstappen has done incredibly well to be as close as he is. So yeah, I think I'm still gonna go. I think Max Verstappen as my driver of the day. Again, because it was so close. When really, again, McLaren, they do have still the edge, clear edge, I think, over Red Bull. And that will probably prove itself tomorrow if Piastri can maintain the lead. On the first lap, Piastri will probably run away with the race tomorrow because that McLaren is still clearly quicker than the rest. But Lando Norris, we got to mention, awful again. He's just not going to win the championship, is Lando. He's nowhere near good enough, I'm afraid. I'm not even sure you could say both Ferrari drivers should be called out for being poor. The car just is bad. Antonelli, absolutely poor performance. Antonelli, a top 5 was right there for him today, and he threw it away. And obviously Tsunoda and Colapinto for crashing. So, yeah, those are some of the poor performances out there today. But, Fernando Alonso, of course, he deserves a shout. Brilliant effort by him. Yanni says, I picked Max because the Red Bull shouldn't be second. That's pretty much why I'm still going for Max's driver of the day, because there is no right for that Red Bull to be on the front row and be that close to a pole position, but that's Max. But, credit to Piastri as well, of course, getting pole, out-qualifying his teammate by, quarter of a second, I think it was. He did exactly what he was asked of today, and that's all he needs to do in that McLaren. The McLaren is the best car, and all he has to do is beat his teammate and deliver the results necessary. And that's why he's leading the championship, because he's able to deliver consistently when his teammate is the complete opposite of that. So yeah, Brabham saying probably Alonso driver of the day, knowing that it's got to be Piastri. Astra says Oscar is thrashing Lando right now. In terms of form, yeah. I mean, in qualifying, Oscar is now 4-3 in the head-to-head. So he's not thrashing him in qualifying, but in terms of form in the races, yeah. And I would be amazed if Lando beats Oscar tomorrow. And really, unless Max can produce one of the all-time great drives, Oscar Piastri should win the race tomorrow. He then says, driver of the day, tough choice, as Alonso, Sainz and others did well, but Piastri simply because he got ahead of Verstappen. Looney Classic says, today the Red Bull had the pace for pole. Max is good, but let's not make it seem like he put a donkey second on the grid. I'm not saying it's a donkey, but I don't think, if you would have put Leclerc, let's not say Leclerc. Let's say if you put Piastri in the Red Bull, Piastri would not be on pole. Piastri would probably be fourth, I would say. Max is just that much better than the rest of the field. That's why he's able to put it up there. Again, it's not a donkey. It's not, it's not a car that should be like in the back end of the top 10. It's not that bad, but it is not a car that should have even been, as close as it was to pole position. So that's why I continuously give Max the credit he deserves, because he is still doing wonders with that car. But the issue is, in terms of tomorrow's Grand Prix and in view to the championship, if Piastri maintains the lead on the first lap, Piastri's probably going to win quite comfortably. Max is already 32 points behind, so he can't afford to lose really any more points. Max has to win tomorrow, really. When Oscar... I mean, if Oscar wins tomorrow, that would obviously be even better for his championship, especially if Lando doesn't finish in second. But Oscar, I don't think Oscar needs to win tomorrow. I think as long as Oscar finishes at, say, at least second, I think he would be fine with that. He's not going to win every race this season, every race remaining. But Max absolutely has to win. And really, I think at this point you would have to say the same for George Russell. If he can win, Russell also needs to get it. But Piastri, with Lando, his teammate, in fourth, Piastri has that comfortability where he doesn't have to win tomorrow's race. Astra saying, or Woody, I reckon in equal cars, Oscar beats Max. No way of knowing until Max accepts that challenge. I completely disagree. Max would comfortably beat Piastri. I love Oscar. I think he's a really good driver, but Max is absolutely better than him. He's a clear level above Oscar. And not just Oscar, you could say he's a level above everyone. I really rate Max that highly. I think Max is easily the best in terms of just speed. I think he is absolutely the best. I think the closest drivers to him, I think probably I'd say Russell and Leclerc at the minute are still, I think, the closest to Max, but Oscar is definitely increasing his reputation in terms of how great he is compared to the other elite drivers on the grid. But Max, for me, is still the best, quite clearly the best. And if Max was in that McLaren, the championship would be over. Max would be winning it incredibly comfortably. But at the end of the day, you don't have to be the best driver on the grid to win a championship. There's plenty of examples of that. Nico Rosberg, Jacques Villeneuve, Damon Hill especially. All you need is the fastest car, and then to be better than your teammate and be consistent in your results. And Oscar has the best car, and is consistently beating his teammate. And that's all he has to do, unless Red Bull or Mercedes can massively improve their cars and become the quickest team. But at the minute, as long as Oscar beats his teammate consistently week in, week out, and gets the best result really he can get, say 90% of the time, that's all Piastri needs to do to win the championship. Again, you don't have to be the best driver on the grid to win the championship. You just need to deliver in your car, especially if it's the best, enough times to get it done. But in regards to tomorrow's race, guys, we will see what happens. Remember, I will be live tomorrow for the race watch along. My co-commentator Niblo will be along with me to commentate on and bring you the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. And what a race we have on our hands. The grid is set up very, very nicely for a good race at Imola. Let me just finish up the votes in the poll. We've had about 80 votes, I think, in this poll. I'll just wait for the results to appear in the chat. And yeah, still waiting. Obviously, YouTube wants to delay things. So yeah, we'll just wait till this poll finally appears. There you go. Finally. Jesus Christ. 79 votes. And I asked you, who do you think is driver of the day for qualifying at Imola? 79 votes. 51% of you have gone for Oscar Piastri. 29% for Verstappen. 11% for Alonso. And 7% for George Russell. Make sure, guys, to join me tomorrow, 2 hours before lights out at 12 p.m. UK time. That's when I'll be going live. But firstly, the build-up to the race, and then the watch-along for the Grand Prix itself. So yeah, 12 p.m. UK time, that's when we'll be going live to cover the race itself. And as well, remember, I will be doing a podcast on Monday reviewing what happened in the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. So if you can't join us for the race watch-along and you want to hear my thoughts, that will come out on Monday, probably Monday afternoon or something like that. So you can still hear my thoughts on the Grand Prix. But yeah, cheers for coming along for today's stream. Been great to have you along. Been great, obviously, to get back streaming. Been a couple weeks. So yeah, thank you guys for coming along. And make sure to join us tomorrow. Before you go, smash the like button. Make sure to check out my last video on Oscar Piastri, which what he's done today has absolutely made my video look great. So yeah, make sure to check that out if you haven't already. And cheers again for the support on that video. Very much happy with that. And yeah, make sure as well. Sorry. Very dry air. That's why I'm coughing so much. Yeah. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Because, of course, we'll be doing watch-alongs throughout the season. Qualifying and race watch-alongs. There you go. That should be better. Sorry about that. Yeah, qualifying and race watch-alongs. So make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. But, guys, until my race watch-along tomorrow, live 2 hours before the race gets underway at 12 p.m. UK time, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.